the dragon flew up to the city and stopped near it nearby. On the back of this dragon was a little boy named Hadar. The dragon turned to him and told him that they had almost arrived at the academy, and from now on he would be in a place where there were many people. Hadar smiled and asked, what kind of adventures are waiting for him ahead? One boy was abandoned in the mountains as a sacrifice shortly after his birth. He was raised by the legendary ancient dragon for 12 years. Anyway, the boy did not know about the miracles that awaited him. As soon as the boy descends from the mountain, he will find himself in complete obscurity. Among all living beings, only he one can boast of high magical power. For thousands of years, he has been feared because he is the most powerful being in this world. It was an ancient dragon. The old dragon was completely forgotten, and he felt only one emotion, and that was fear. The dragon thought that this was simply impossible. Why is he trembling all over? Is he really scared? Lack of faith. Abandoned at the foot of the mountain. There was only a small child in front of him. The dragon stared at this little boy and thought it was a human child. And why did such a huge magical power emanate from this tiny creature? He's already lived for a whole 1,000 years, but this is the first time this has happened to him. Although his end is near, what the hell is going on here? He sighed and quietly said that at such and such an age. Then he smiled and said that it was aging. How much time has already passed, so his feelings are already failing him. But now is not the time to dwell on nonsense. Throughout history, humans are one of the few times that dragons have ever come face to face. And all thanks to their unsurpassed ability for magical control. If you think of dragons as a thing, then they are more quantitative than qualitative. With people, everything happens differently. The ability to perform magical manipulations, and the total magical power possessed by this child is half of it. That is much more than that of an ordinary dragon. In the future, this child will be able to master higher magic. With the magical power of a dragon, he will be able to use human magic without restrictions. He's going to make an incredible monster. And this thought scared the dragon very much. So he decided to destroy this child and told him not to hold a grudge against him. But as soon as the dragon had already swung its huge claws in order to kill this child, the child just laughed. The dragon froze in great surprise and thought that he was giggling. The boy took this huge claw with his little hands and started playing with it. He was just speechless and thought, does he really think he's playing with him? After which, the dragon laughed loudly and said that she understood. Then she will raise this child. Fortunately, children tend to consider their parents the one they see, especially when it comes to parenting. If he is going to become a monster, then he must have allies on his side. And besides, this boy, these are just empty hopes and thoughts. But what if he can prolong his life with magic? She would entrust her future to such a child. He is her only real hope, so she names him Hadar, and she is counting on him very much. Soon, a whole year has already passed. Hadar was now in the cave of this dragon and began to act up. The dragon was distracted from his work and asked him if the human child was hungry, and what should she feed him. After that, she seemed to remember something and then assumed her human form. She turned from a dragon into an ordinary woman, which the boy was very surprised at. The woman picked him up and said that the transformation into a human being, and she's even younger than she thought. After that, she bared her breasts and said that here was some breast milk for him. Hadar began to drink it greedily. The woman continued to look at him and said that he was poor. He must be very hungry by now. Just a second later, the boy pulled away and clearly already felt much better. The woman smiled and asked that he felt a surge of strength, right? And after that, Hadar just took off and ran somewhere as fast as he could. The woman was very surprised and asked if a child could run so fast. She looked out of the cave and looked in the direction that the boy had rushed. She shouted at him that he would crash into a tree at such a pace. However, even this did not stop him in any way. Hadar just stopped shortly before the collision with the tree and used his magic, thereby simply uprooting the tree. The woman immediately ran after him and thought that he had uprooted him. She said that she certainly expected everything. However, she wants it that way too. Some more time has passed, and the boy has already grown up enough. Hadar turned 4 years old. Now the two of them were sitting in a clearing, and the woman told him that at last he did not need to be breastfed. Hadar proudly said yes. The woman winked at him and asked if he was sure he didn't want to try one last time. Hadar was very embarrassed and, calling her his mother, said that no, it was not necessary. Now he already wants to learn something new. The woman said that he still had a lot to do. And what about using magic? Hadar's eyes even lit up, and he said that magic, right? He immediately ran up to his mother and said that he really wanted to learn how to do what she did. The woman asked if it was something like her dragon breath or something, but it's still too early for him. Hadar got upset and asked why. The woman said that he might know how to make magic circles, but even a dragon takes 2 years to master this technique. Hadar didn't want to give up on this idea anyway and said he wouldn't know until they tried, right? The woman sighed and said what kind of child he was. She thinks there's nothing she can do. She would teach him some things, though. Hadar was very happy about this and was already preparing to listen carefully to his mother. The woman used her magic and said that this magic circle was necessary for the dragon's breath. He should visualize it in his head and then direct his gaze in the right direction. The magic will act on its own, but he shouldn't shoot at the ground. He'd rather aim at the sky. The woman herself thought that if she had the same power as Hadar, she could even split the earth. Hadar smiled at her again and said that he understood everything. After that, the boy closed his eyes and concentrated. He said he had to submit. He immediately had the same picture in his head that his mother had shown him. The woman was stunned. After that, the boy was able to use this power. The woman was in complete shock and told him to aim at the sky. Hadar was able to apply the dragon's breath. She thought, did he really do that on the first try? What the hell is going on? It's just an incredible power. But even she, with her incredible skills, had a hard time coping with this in the beginning. The power of this little man and the magic of control. Since then, Hadar has been receiving guidance from his mother. The boy practiced using this power every day. He was very pleased and amused by this. On one of those days, he said it was so cool. He wants to try again. The woman watched all this with horror and thought that he really liked it. But still, his mana soon ran out. But the boy did not stop there and began to study and study hard. A woman came into his room one day and asked him what he was doing there. Hadar smiled at her and said that he was working on her magic grimoire. He also learned many magical things. Halar once created an exact copy of her with the help of his magic. The woman asked if it was really sand. He has incredible strength. Well, then it's been 6 years. Hadar has already turned 10 years old. And that day, the woman showed him a new magic spell. Hadar watched closely what she was doing and asked what it was. The woman said that this magic is so great that even she with her power cannot control it. And that's the last circle she's going to teach him. It's a life extension magic, and she really wants him to apply it on her. Hadar was terrified and asked her if she was really going to die. The woman said that she was only 477 years old, no less. In the human equivalent, she is about 5 years old. Hadar smiled and thought that was all. He told her that if she asked him, he would definitely do it. The woman was very happy about this, and Hadar immediately applied his new studied magic, which was just the same magic and prolongation of life. The woman said that her body seemed to be getting lighter. It was him she had been waiting for all her life. Will he be able to try again to do so? He has to do it. Hadar smiled and said that it was good. Soon they were completely exhausted and just lying on the ground. The woman said that at last. She will be able to live another 10,000 years. Hadar looked very pleased and thanked her. The woman hugged him and said that he had grown up so quickly. He was so small and cute just recently, and now he is coping with such complex magic. He's a real savior. Hadar was a little embarrassed and said that he still had a lot to do. And besides, savior is more about her. The woman looked at him questioningly. Hadar said that he remembers what happened in the mountains. The adults called him Imiko, and there was horror on their faces. Imika means dream child in Japanese. Hadar said that now he understands that if his mother had not saved him then, he would not be alive now, so she is his savior. The woman smiled again, called him her sweet little boy, and told him to hug his mom, after which she squeezed him in her tight embrace. Hadar said it hurt. She's going to strangle him. Some time later, Hadar went outside again to meet his mother. He was already 12 years old. He asked me if I was wondering if Mom would be coming home soon. He thinks he can go about his usual business. Meanwhile, the woman wandered through the forest and wondered what Hadar was passionate about in her absence. In her mind, she had already imagined a picture of him rushing into her arms, as he missed her so much. He would have told her that she had been gone for 3 whole days, and he missed her so much. Where has she been? Which woman was thinking about it? She had already reached home and said that she was at home, and I was in great shock from what I saw. Hadar was training again. He used his dragon flame magic. The woman froze in surprise, and then she was blown away by the shockwave from this magic. The woman fell down and asked what was going on here. The boy had just noticed her and said that she had already returned. The woman asked what he was doing. Hadar ran up to her and told her that he had tried magic to train the dragon's breath and flame. This technique enhances concentration absorption. They should try to do it together. The woman said that even she couldn't do that. The boy looked around and saw the scattered sheets of paper that his mother had brought with her. He said it seemed like he had made a mess here. The woman also looked around and said that these were her documents. The boy began to help her collect all these documents and then stopped at one. The woman smiled and said that he had said that he wanted to travel and learn something new. He has a month to prepare, after which there will be an exam. He has to study very hard and then take the entrance exam to the Royal Academy of Magic. Hadar smiled, strained, and said that when he turned 12, he would enter the academy. That was his plan. The woman said that she knew that in the future he would have to go down the mountain, start communicating with other people. Hadar, apparently, began to worry a little about this and said that he had not been preparing all this time. Is everything going to be fine for sure? His mom told him not to worry. If he fails this year, then no one else will pass the exam. And here's a copy of the samples form in case he needs it. Hadar took the textbook and asked how she could be so sure, after which he sighed and said that he believed he had no choice but to do his best. So after that, he went back to his room and immediately started studying hard. He tried to take a mock test from this textbook and was very surprised. He froze and thought that this was a trial test. It contains materials from books that his mother made him read. And there were even those that turned out to be more difficult than the questions here. Then he'll definitely get over it quickly. The woman had been watching him nearby all this time and thought that he had already gone through so many difficulties. To see him overcome them is simply amazing. But then panic settled in her head, and the woman said that if Hadar entered the academy, she would not be able to watch him grow up and would only see him on vacation. Then she burst into his room and told him to stop and give her the book. It's all nonsense, so he should burn this book and go to bed already. Hadar said that was enough. He won't give up anything then. The woman said that then he would try later. 12 years ago, a baby abandoned in the mountains was found by one of the most powerful creatures on Earth. And then, the powerful ancient dragon became a loving parent. Above the Royal Academy of Magic, Zelgios, the woman turned into a dragon again in order to deliver Har to this particular magic academy. Soon the woman stopped and said that this was the maximum distance she could fly. If people see a dragon, they will definitely panic. Hadar said that when he applied his flight magic and landed gently, the woman told him to be careful. Hadar said that he was fine and then jumped off his mother's back. Soon he landed successfully on the ground and began to look closely at this academy. His eyes were burning, and he said that this was how the Royal Zelgios Academy was. This is the place where his new life will begin. But still, he began to worry again and said that, of course, if he could pass the exam today. He stopped at the gate and asked what and where it was held at all. Can he even enter here without permission? If he comes in here, there may be problems. How will he look his mother in the eye then? He had even imagined the situation when they started scolding him. Lee's teachers would have told him that anyone who intruded on the territory was a scoundrel, and they didn't like such people at the academy. Because of this, the boy became even more worried. He said that he would be torn up like an ace in a hot water bottle. And where should he go? Then a girl came up to him from behind who asked if something had happened to him. Hadar said he was looking for a check-in desk for the exam, but it was nowhere to be found. The girl continued to look at him in surprise and said that of course she would not be here. Hadar looked at her questioningly. The girl told him that he was at the gate now, and registration was taking place at the main entrance. Hadar asked if he could definitely come in here. The girl asked why not. Hadar didn't know what to say to that. But, apparently, the girl guessed it herself and asked that he wasn't from these parts. Was he? Hadar began to shake all over. The girl said she thought so. The boy said he was from the mountainlands, so this is all new to him. The girl said that then let her take him around the neighborhood. Hadar was very grateful to her for this, as it would greatly simplify the task for him. Soon after, they reached the front desk. The girl asked what it means they will be in the first grade, right? Hadar said that their exam numbers differ by 1. The girl smiled and said that it seemed like fate. After that, they found their exam class A, where they went. Their first exam was written. Everyone who wrote this exam has already entered the office and taken their seats. The teacher greeted everyone and said that they would start the writing part. Have them hand the sheets to the person behind them. The girl handed the sheets to Hadar, who thanked her in a whisper for showing him everything. The girl said with the same smile that they should help others if necessary, right? They must do their best. The boy stared at her in embarrassment and said yes. And immediately after that, the teacher announced the beginning of the written exam. After completing the first exam, the girl stood at the auditorium where they were writing this exam and waited for Hadar to come out of it. When she noticed him, she asked how everything went with him. Hadar said he was a little nervous, but that was to be expected. The girl said that of course, because the atmosphere here is completely different from what they had at home. Hadar said that the questions were mostly similar to those found in almost all 6 subjects. And then the girl froze. She hit the table and told him to stop. There are 2 compulsory subjects and 2 out of 4 elective subjects to take the exam. He only had to take 4 subjects. Why did he do all 6? Hadar smiled sheepishly and said that he was so nervous and didn't want to miss something, so let it be just in case. The girl was just in shock and thought that maybe he decided to complicate his life just in case. There was nothing complicated there. Hadar said that he worried too much and solved everything 5 times. The girl thought that she wanted to double-check everything, but time was running out. She said that now they need to take the sword proficiency exam. Hadar looked at her worriedly and said she was so upset. Is everything okay with her worriedly and said she was so upset. Is everything okay with her? After that, they left the institution itself and headed to the street where their second exam was supposed to take place. Some students have already passed the exam. The teacher for this exam has already finished testing the student and told the next one to come up. Hadar asked, what is the scoring system for this exam? The girl said that it is simply impossible to convince here. Everything is a little different here. There are several sword fighting fields to pass this exam, and it seems that they are distributed depending on his number. Well, she needs to go there so they'll see each other soon. Hadar nodded and headed for his field, where his exam was supposed to take place. In front of him, he saw a guy who took out his sword and said thank you in advance. Hadar stared at the student in surprise and thought, did he really take a sword with him? He also looked at the other students and thought that he was not the only one. Did everyone bring a sword with them? But he's not ready himself. He doesn't have anything with him, but the exam will start very soon. He began to imagine again how the teacher would scold him. Would the teacher tell him that, of course, he has a sword? They don't need such scoundrels. People like him are not welcome at the academy. At that moment, the teacher said to let the next one enter the ring. Hadar collapsed to his knees in great excitement and said that now he was finished. The teacher asked what was wrong with him. Hadar said he had forgotten his sword. He'll forgive him for that. The teacher himself began to get nervous and said that he did not need to worry so much. There are already swords prepared for the exam. Let him come to that counter and take any one for himself. Hadar calmed down a bit and said that it was fine. He walked up to this rack and saw a whole mountain of swords that had already been broken. The boy said that others had already trained with their help. Are all the swords like that here? After that, he turned to his teacher again and asked if he could make a sword for himself. It will meet all the requirements. There is no weapon on the rack that would allow him to fight. The teacher is very surprised, but stared at him. He said it didn't contradict the rules. So, Hadar thanked him for that. The teacher himself thought that he was one of those who would find a loophole in the rules and take advantage of it, right? But he won't be able to blame him if he fails. Hadar smiled and said that since he had received permission, he would create a super strong sword. To do this, he needs to combine 2 things. After that, he used his magic, which he learned from his mother. The teacher was horrified and said that it was the wind. No, more precisely, the magic of the wind. It's just unbelievable. This can't be happening. And soon after, Hadar created a sword for himself. The teacher was surprised and thought that he really could do it. Was he asleep? It was just his imagination, wasn't it? Hadar evaluated his sword and said that it was excellent, both in terms of weight and strength. The teacher said he didn't know what had just happened, but he was ready, wasn't he? Then they will start their duel. Hadar said yes, and he thanks him in advance. After which, he immediately rushed to the attack. The teacher dodged his punch and said that he had well-honed movements, and his speed was excellent. He knew that he was different from the other subjects. However, the examiner pounced on the boy from behind and asked what if he would fight at full strength. However, it was not difficult for the boy to repel this attack. At the same time, that girl had already finished her exam and said that everything was much faster than she expected. She remembered Hadar and asked if the little man had done well. He could put all his strength into training. Perhaps he is trying so hard for some specific purpose. At that moment, she just walked up to the ring where Hadar was supposed to fight. However, what she saw, she could not have expected in any way. The teacher was crying and looking at his broken sword, which had broken as a result of their battle. Hadar apologized to him and said that he tried to hit very carefully. The girl was in complete shock and thought that the examiner was both impressed and upset at the same time. She went up to Hadar and asked him what he had done here. Hadar said they crossed swords and the examiner couldn't handle his strength. The girl thought that it was as if she did not see it herself. And I asked him what could be wrong with his sword. Hadar pouted and said that he had alchemized it on the spot. It's just an ordinary sword and there's nothing wrong with it. The girl asked if he had really made it himself. Could she take a look at him? Hadar handed her his sword and said that of course. But the girl couldn't even hold it in her hands and said how heavy it was, after which she fell after this sword. Herod was not at all surprised by this and said that of course. The girl said that it was just an incredibly heavy sword. What did he make it out of? Hadar easily picked up this sword and said that he had made it from an alloy of orichalcum and adamant. The girl was speechless and could not even comment on it in any way. Hadar said that using alchemical transmutation, he created a compound of air, which theoretically can be called the strongest combination of elements. The girl did not even try to understand all this and said that she did not understand all this, and said that she did not understand a word at all. Does he really need to study at this academy? At that moment, the examiner came to his senses and said that, and what was this guy just thinking about? A sword that is made of the hardest and purest metals. So we also created it with such ease. Even the sword made by a skilled craftsman could not stand it. He was also very upset that his own sword had broken. He said that how one sword could break another. Hadar said that if you look at it, the specific gravity of adamant is about 15, with a weight of about 300 grams. This is 15 times the weight of gold. The examiner said that if this was really the case, then the weight of the sword would be Hadar had already read everything in his head and asked for about 65 kilograms, right? The examiner, along with that girl, moved away from him, and at the same time, told him to stop waving it like that. He's going to chop off their heads like that. The examiner said okay. He passed. He may already be preparing for the next exam. Hadar was probably a little embarrassed by this and said that no, because he thinks they need a rematch, if it is, of course, possible. The examiner was categorically against it and said that he was not going to have a repeat match. He probably just doesn't have the opportunity. So now, get out of here. And finally, lunch came. Hadar and that girl decided to have lunch together. The girl said that the Royal Academy of Magic, far. Ede. She couldn't believe that this was real, and said that he was in a place that she had always admired very much. Is this definitely not a dream? The girl said that the Historical Academy has the best teachers, and graduates achieve brilliant results in science and society. If only she had passed. Will she be able to fulfill her dream? But Hadar apparently wasn't listening to her, as he was still in shock from what happened on the second exam. The girl said that everything was fine. Honestly, he's the only one who could beat the examiner himself, so that's cool. Hadar said he knew that, but it wasn't an exam to win. Can he be kicked out after that? He didn't want to tarnish his reputation. His result will be the most terrible. The girl tried to support him and said that it was okay, because next time he would definitely try. Hadar took a sandwich for a snack and asked that the next exam was related to magic, right? The girl said yes, and there are 2 different testing methods. Hadar said that hitting a target is an exam for magical attacking abilities about creating objects. It's creative, right? The girl said that's exactly what happened. She thinks that she herself will be able to pass the attack magic test. Still, she practiced very hard. Hadar said he thinks he should try his hand at the creative stage. Not that he was good at creating magical attributes. The girl remembered again about the sword he had created and said that yes, that's right. He doesn't really care about the extra points for creativity, right? Hadar said he would not miss the opportunity to make the most of this ordeal. The girl asked if he was sure of his choice. Hadar stared at her a little in surprise and asked why she was asking him that. The girl said that, of course, the point system is very cool, but the final grade is at the discretion of the examiner himself. They may intentionally lower his score. Hadar apparently was not very scared by this, and he said that even so, he believes that he is still making the right choice. He needs to take advantage of this opportunity. The girl did not argue with him and said that since he had decided so, she would not argue with him, she would not argue with him. But let him try not to overdo it, okay? Hadar shuddered and said that everything would be completely different. This is where they will part for a while. The girl said that she still did not know his name. Her name is Cecilia, and she was very happy to have fun with him. The boy also introduced himself and said his name was Hadar, and he is grateful for her help. Cecilia said that she really hopes that they will still be in the first grade. Hadar asked about classmates, right? Does she really think that they will pass this exam? With all my strength, I sighed heavily and said that his negative attitude was back. And after that, their third exam began. The examiners already gathered everyone in the class and said that they will now hold an exam on magic. This is a room for creating magical items. And this year there are few people here again. Why is this so? But he really wanted to see more applicants. He even prepared all sorts of buns for them in the form of points. What was he hoping for? Hadar looked at the examiner in shock and thought, what does it mean that those extra points were for the sake of attracting attention, or what? The examiner came to his senses and said that they should let them explain all the details of this exam. They only have an hour. With the help of the magic stones that are now in front of them, they should try to craft a magic item. Actually, that's it. They can find other materials at the end of the class. They should not be shy about taking them and using them. Hadar completely concentrated and thought that it was not to say that these stones were of high quality, but it was possible to work with them. He thought, what if he can create the perfect magic item from all possible with the help of this stone, and get not only the highest score but also additional points? It will be quite difficult to correct the mistakes that were made on the fencing exam, but there is always a chance anyway, and he is confident of his success. And then his fun academic life will begin. It will definitely pass. At that moment, the examiner announced the start of their exam. The next day in the staff room, the teacher who introduced the fencing exam asked the girl if she was sure it was definitely him. The girl said definitely. She remembered his face. Two teachers were discussing Hadar right now. The man said that on the written exam, where the passing score is 65%, he has the only highest score in all 4 subjects. He even took an additional 2 subjects, although he didn't have to do it, and he also got the highest score on them. The girl said that as for the fencing exam, he created an alchemized sword from an alloy of orichalcum and adamas, literally out of thin air, and brandished it while holding it in one hand. Is he definitely human? At that moment, the examiner who conducted the last exam came into the staff room and told them that the 2 of them should listen to him carefully. He brought with him a subject that was created by the students in his exam, and said that this subject was created by one of yesterday's candidates in the exam, a device for controlling gravity. It's hard to believe, isn't it? He always thought that he existed only in theory. The other 2 examiners looked at it and thought that it was definitely made by that kid. The man from the last exam said that he wanted to give this child more creative points than usual. 30 will do, right? The fencing examiner said he could give him at least 10,000. He's going to be a special candidate anyway. Thus, for the first time since the foundation of the academy, one of the applicants has the highest scores. With such incredible results, Hadar passed the exams perfectly. However, he doesn't know anything about it yet. He tormented himself with stupid thoughts during the post, but that's a completely different story. After the exam, he returned to his mother and was very worried about the results. He locked himself in his room and asked why she had sent him there in the first place. If he fails, he will have to retake exams for the rest of his life. However, the woman was pleased on the contrary, and she asked if her wish would really come true. 2 days after the announcement of the results, In the dining room of the Royal Academy, Herod had just taken lunch for himself and was looking for an empty seat to sit in. He looked around and said it was so empty. It seems that these are students who were recently enrolled, right? It's not that bad. And then he didn't notice that another student was coming to meet him, so the two of them bumped into each other. And these students turned out to be Cecilia, whom he met at the exam itself. The two students were very happy to see each other, and together they sat down at one table. Hadar asked if she had passed the exam too. I smiled with all my might and said that I was like him too. And at the same time, she called him Hadar's disciple, addressing him with you. Hadar looked at her questioningly and asked why she was addressing him so politely. Cecilia explained to him and said that there was no other way here. He's one of 3 special students this year. He's an incredible kid who scored the highest scores. Herod started to get nervous about her words again and asked what was so unusual about it. Let's her give him back to Cecilia, who was with him at the entrance exams. The girl could barely contain her laughter, and after that she apologized and said that she just wanted to tease him a little. Herod, a little offended, turned away from her and said that fuck her. At that moment, he turned his attention to the stand that hung on the wall. At this stand, there was an appeal to all students of the academy, and it was written that they should learn the highest architectural skills. Bamboo Construction Company offers a 1-day internship. Herod said that his mother had told him something. Cecilia looked up from her meal and looked at him questioningly. Herod recalled the words of his mother, who said that even during his studies, he would encounter Gakuchika, and he will have to make an effort if he wants to achieve great results. Herod said it's important to try everything for your own future. Cecilia smiled and asked that his mom was a very nice person, right? Herod immediately replied that, of course, she's very cool and the best in the whole world. Cecilia said yes. She understood him. The girl herself thought that he was telling her that his parents were the best of all, but he clearly admired his mother much more. Herod said that he still couldn't imagine how he would work in an office. Cecilia pointed him to the same booth and asked what could be done then to apply. After her words, Herod immediately jumped up from his seat and said that was it. It's been decided. He will try to apply. He has never done anything like this, but he will try his best. Cecilia decided to play a little joke on him again, and said that just don't let him do any weird things, as it was on the exam. People are still whispering about him. Herod told her to stop talking about it already. At that very moment, a girl with long blonde hair was passing behind, whom Herod noticed. He turned to look at her, and their eyes met. The girl also froze and began to look at him attentively. Herod blushed a little and thought she was watching him. How beautiful she is! After that, the girl immediately turned away and left the dining room. Herod smiled and asked that it was too loud, right? I should have told him that about myself. Cecilia noticed something about herself at that moment and thought that he liked girls like that. 5 days later, Herod's was nevertheless accepted for this internship, and he arrived at the headquarters of the bamboo company. Herod was incredibly happy about this and said that his name was Herod, and next month he would be officially enrolled in the Royal Academy of Magic, Zelsius. He saw a recruitment poster for their company on the walls of the campus. Their corporate philosophy really resonated with him, and that's why he applied. Thanked them so much for accepting it. The receiving person said that his words were very valuable to them. After that, they walked through the rows of this audience and handed out some leaflets. They were told that now each of them would receive several documents for review. After reading them, they have to move on to the real thing, so they have to be very careful. Herod began to study these papers carefully and said that the first floor should be durable in its construction. Mainly an alloy of mithril and adamant is used. The upper floors should be strong and light, so that an alloy of steel and mithril is used for their construction. Herod read all this from these documents and thought about it. He said that Eric Halkovo adamantine alloy is on the first floor. Most likely, mithril and adamant are not used on the upper floors because... However, he was interrupted by a man who came up to him and said that it was good that he questioned what he had written. This only proves his responsible approach to learning, as expected from a student at Zelsius. The girl ran up to him and asked, what was President Wright? What is he doing here? President Wright said he came all this way for the internship. It was rude of him to miss the opportunity to get to know him. And about what he just said. Let him turn the page. Work always requires a budget. That is, in other words, the amount of money that can be spent on it is always allocated in advance. And he himself probably knows that adamant is an extremely valuable and very expensive metal. They can't use it because of the limited budget. Herod looked at the president questioningly. He asked if adamant couldn't just be created. It won't take that long. Now President Wright looked at the boy very surprised and asked what was he talking about. What is he going to do? After that, Herod resorted to his magic and created adamant right in front of this president. He said that's how it is. President Wright was completely shocked and asked what the hell. Herod said that he thinks that in other conditions they will need more material, and then the financial cost will be almost zero. President Wright said he was just joking. He just can't believe that adamant can be made so easily. He will be able to verify its authenticity only by touching it. After that, he took this material in his hands and said that he just couldn't believe it. It's really an adamantine alloy. But how is this even possible? Is he really that skilled in magic? Herod said that wasn't quite true. This is an atomic transformation. He made an alloy out of air. President Wright couldn't stop being surprised and asked what the hell. So he meant that they could use these materials just by taking them out of thin air, or what? Herod said quite calmly that it was true. The president grabbed his head and said that this technology would shake all the foundations of the construction industry. What's his name? The boy introduced himself and said his name was Herod. The man said that he was very glad to meet you. Now let him pretend that today's internship never happened. He has special skills, and they don't need him as an intern. Thanks to him, they will be able to develop their business. Can they talk about it in person? Harem was in incredible shock and thought that yes, of course. President Wright said that he would not accept refusals either. He doesn't want to lose it. Now let him go to the warehouse. Herod said it was as if he had a choice. After that, he went to the warehouse with President Wright. Herod looked around and thought how spacious it was here. What to expect from the kingdom's leading construction company. President Rory approached him and said that he wanted to know something. How much of this alloy can he make? The boy thought about it and said that there were probably 1,000 carts. The man was surprised and said that 1,000. It's even possible. Harada surprised him greatly with her reaction, and he thought that there was nothing wrong with it. President Wright said it was good. He understood everything and believes him. The boy was very surprised and asked if he didn't even have to convince him. He himself thought that how huge a cart he had imagined there. President Wright said they should get right to the point. They need somewhere around 250 tons of such an alloy, and a total of 750 tons is required. Herod exhaled and thought that it meant he didn't need a cosmic number. The man asked him that he agreed to 3.7 billion cucumbers. Right? Herod thought it was unbelievable, and I asked the president if he really deserved that much. The boy himself thought that he just learned it when he was playing with his mother. President Wright said that his abilities were worth much more. Herod said that then they would start. President Wright said he was counting on him a lot. After that, Herod easily created a whole mountain of this material. President Wright was in incredible shock. He gaped and said, "Wow, it's just unbelievable." After that, the president ran away very quickly and shouted to the boy to wait for him here for a while. Herod just looked at the fleeing president in surprise and said that was fine. President Wright ran down the corridor where he ran into his staff. Someone told him not to run down the hall. President Wright apologized and said he had a very important deal. Another employee of his said that he spilled coffee on his clothes. President Wright apologized again and said he would buy him a new one, whatever he wanted. Herod just stayed where he was, waiting for him, hearing all those screams. Shortly after, President Wright returned to him with a strange suitcase. The man was exhausted, so he even fell down. Herod got scared and asked if he was okay. President Wright put the suitcase in front of him and apologized for keeping him waiting. Herod said it was okay. After that, the man opened his suitcase, where there was a lot of gold, and said that this was his payment for all this alloy. 3.7 billion cucurruses in gold coins. Herod said that there are so many of them here. President Wright apologized to him and said that because of the budget constraints, they could only afford it, so let him forgive them. Herod immediately hid all this gold and smiled at the president again. President Wright looked at his reaction and said that, however, he seemed to be happy about it. As the president of a large corporation, he has to make sure that he is happy with everything. He patted the boy on the shoulder and said that he would think about what else to do to make amends. He would be very grateful if he would give them some more time. Herod was greatly shocked and thought that there would really be another reward. He told the president that it must be very difficult to be president. The president told him that the bigger his company, the higher his pay and the more stress there would be. He bears responsibility for the future of all employees and their families on his shoulders. Herod thought about it and thought that families ever come as shoulders. Herod thought about it and thought that families, Fav, Ignike. He remembered his mother and wondered what she was like there. After that, he turned to President Wright again and said that he was indeed an outstanding business leader. He himself thought that he did not know whether he wanted to become the same as him. President Wright said that he has always strived for this. Talent is human capital, and employees are their best asset to the company. At that moment, two people burst into the warehouse, and they obviously stared at Herod very unkindly as if they had already figured out how to mess with him. Herod immediately became alert when he saw their strange expressions. President Wright asked these people, "What are they doing here?" "He's very sorry, but they can't come here." The guy came forward and said that he was very cold, but they wanted to talk to him alone. President Wright also tensed up and said what an impudence it was. "What do they want?" The guy grinned and said that it was simply pointless to work tirelessly for a small profit. The girl took out the very ad that Herod had come here for and said that they had found this internship ad too. Then a brilliant idea came to their heads. If they kidnap him, they'll make a fortune on his ransom. Immediately after that, two students attacked President Wright. The president tensed up and did not know what he should do. But Herod came to his aid, who applied atomic transformation. The Congo wall formed right in front of them, the diamond fortress that those two students crashed into. The girl hit this wall hard and fell to the ground. The guy got scared and told her to pack up. Herod said that it was very difficult for him to talk because he didn't hit the wall. After that, the boy himself broke down his wall and said that President Wright was attentive and very kind to his colleagues, and he sincerely respected him. Even adamant can't compare to what the president gives his staff. Well, he was already ready to face his enemies, and that was his advantage. The guy obviously tensed up after his words, because now he understood that he would not leave so easily. So soon after, he lost consciousness from severe fright. Herod was finally able to exhale. He turned to the president and asked him if he was injured. President Wright said he was fine. "Thank you." He himself stared at this boy and thought that he knew more than just alchemy. Also, his fighting skills are just on top. What else doesn't he know about him? At that moment, the staff arrived to provide assistance. They broke into the warehouse and said that the security service had arrived at the place. What was that noise? President Wright said it was just a little problem. Let them think that this kid has done their job. A month has passed since then, and yet Herod and Cecilia ended up in the first grade. At the first lesson, the teacher greeted them and said that he congratulated them all on enrolling. Cecilia and Herod were in Class A. At recess, a girl came up to him and asked what they were doing together, right? She is very glad to see him again. Herod nodded and said yes. Cecilia asked how his internship went. Did he do anything wrong there? Herod tensed up and said that he had received a job offer. The girl was completely shocked and said that it was quite expected. No wonder he got this offer. Herod said it was just luck. It's just that the stars matched. Cecilia said that they would consider it all due to his status as a special student. Herod said she'd done it again. The boy looked out the window and thought that, to be honest, he needed to work here. On the ground. It feels like he hasn't moved from the dead end. He has lived in the mountains all this time. But from now on, he will be with the guys at this academy. He really hopes that he can get along with them. At that moment, a student approached them, who turned to Herod and asked that he was the star student, right? Herod looked at the student in surprise and said that apparently this is exactly the case. He grinned at the guy and said that it was so good that he was here. He really needs him to do something for him. Herod was obviously very unhappy about this and thought that would he really have to do something for others again. Herod stared at the man in fright and asked what was the matter. The guy still arrogantly continued to talk to him and said that about it. After that, he just reached out with his huge hand, and Herod automatically covered his face with his hands because he thought that the guy was going to beat him now. But that guy just gently took his hands and said he wanted him to make adamant dumbbells. The guy's voice immediately changed and was more affectionate, and his eyes just shone. Herod continued to look at the student in surprise and asked, "What are dumbbells, or what?" The guy said that was it. He took out 2 dumbbells from somewhere, which he began to pull and said that as he could see for himself, He kept himself in shape all the time. Herod looked at it carefully and thought that he also carries these dumbbells with him all the time. Or what? The guy was upset, said that lately. Dumbbells seemed to be too light for him, and there were not enough strength exercises in his workouts. Saying all this, he continued to swing the dumbbells in different directions. Herod tried to pull away from him as much as he was worried that he might hit him with these dumbbells, and thought that he shouldn't swing them like that. The guy stopped his occupation and put the dumbbells on the table. After which he said that he had seen one time how he made a sword from adamantine alloy and defeated the examiner himself. It was just legendary. The guy talked about it incredibly enthusiastically, as if he had already become a fan of Harada. Herod didn't like it very much, and he asked if he was also a legend now. Cecilia immediately joined in their conversation when she heard about this sword and asked the guy just as enthusiastically that he also saw it all happen, right? Herod was startled, because he did not expect this from his new friend. The girl now began to communicate with this guy, as if not paying any attention to Hart at all. Cecilia said she was so jealous. Would he be able to tell her all about it in detail? She is very sorry that she could not see it for herself. The guy smiled and said that without any problems. Herod said that maybe they had enough. After that, the guy turned to Herod again and said, what about the dumbbells? He doesn't ask him to do it for him for free, and he will definitely pay him for his help. Herod thought it was a conspiracy. Cecilia asked him that he could do it, right? She will personally oversee the entire process. Herod asked why she was in league with him. But still, the boy himself saw no reason to refuse him and said that it should be so. He himself thought that it was better than it could actually be. The guy smiled at him again and thanked him for it. And immediately after that, Herod began to create for him the very dumbbells that he was asked for. He created some dumbbells and asked the guy if it would suit him. He made several different weights so he can choose any of them. The guy looked at it all with delight and said that it was just incredible. He immediately started trying each of these dumbbells and said that these would suit him perfectly. He likes it very much. Herod said he was very glad to hear that. After that, he turned to his storage magic and said that was right. A kind of portal appeared in front of him, which he began to dig into and said that he thought it was here somewhere. Cecilia, along with his guy, gaped at this picture. At the same time, they thought that it was not surprising that he could also control storage magic. And shortly after that, Herod took out some kind of tool from his storage and said that here. The guy and Cecilia stared at him questioningly, as this was the first time they had seen such a device. The guy asked, "What is it?" Herod had already started twisting something there and said that he would figure it out for himself now. And after that, all the dumbbells and they themselves rose into the air. Cecilia was in incredible shock and said that it just couldn't be. This is the one. Herod smiled and said yes. It's a gravity manipulator. It works several times, and he can include it in his dumbbells as a bonus. The guy said he didn't think such things could be given away for nothing. And at that moment, their teacher came into the office and told them to all take their places. These 3 students froze in place and stared at the teacher who had just entered the office. At the moment, they were still under the influence of this gravitational manipulator. Their homeroom teacher, whose name is Seal, said that he understands that they may be very worried because it's their first day after all. But at least let them try to calm down and take their places. Herod, Cecilia, and that guy immediately apologized and said they were very sorry. Well, after greeting Professor Seal himself, Herod and the rest of the guys from this class began to talk about themselves. Herod, along with his new friends, had already introduced himself and resumed his seat. At that moment, Professor Seal invited the next student to the blackboard in order for him to introduce himself. The girl got up from her seat and said that she was fine. The guy immediately noticed her beauty and turned to Herod, who asked if he thought this girl was just incredibly cute. Only after his words did Herod look in the direction of this girl. This girl smiled at the same time and said that she was very glad to meet all of them. Her name is Jasmine Veilvar, and she really hopes that in the future she will be able to help her father, who is the president of the bamboo company, because she really wants to take from this academy and that's it. Herod recognized the girl almost immediately and thought it was the same girl in the dining room. It turns out that she is the daughter of President Wright. Now it is clear that she has very good connections. The guy asked him that he wanted to meet her, right? She's so beautiful. Herod rolled his eyes and said that he would probably give it up, because he didn't want it to affect his work. The guy stared at him in surprise and asked what the job was, right? Herod obviously didn't want to talk about it with him, so he asked if it wasn't already time for him. The guy only came to his senses after his words and said that for sure. His name is Jan Zelgis, and he is very glad to meet him. He picked up his new dumbbells again and said that his hobby is sports. Well, and he is also the first prince of the country. Herod didn't even know how to react to all this and thought that he was a prince. Or what? That's where he should have started. And at that moment, Professor CL asked the next student to come over. Herod got up from his seat and introduced himself as well. He told his entire class that he came from a place deep in the mountains. The professor intervened and said that he had heard that he had made a special impression on everyone. Herod sighed heavily and thought that next to the first prince and the daughter of the president, it would be very difficult to stand out in the academy. After a while, their one first lesson came to an end, and now Herod was sitting alone at his desk and just reading a book. He was very focused and said that magic elements have properties of both waves and particles. Then Jan came up to him, who was training non-stop and, calling him a nerd, said that they should go train. Herod looked up from his reading and thought that there must be some explanation. Jan asked him what he was reading so enthusiastically there. Herod said that the book is about the relationship of magical elements and waves. Jan asked what the elements and waves are, right? Herod said that magic elements have the same properties, which means that if you defeat the opponent's magic with an antiphase 1, then theoretically any magic can be nullified. Jan said he didn't understand what he was talking about here at all. Can he explain it to him in a less abstruse way? Herod rolled his eyes and thought, what is this? After that, he said that he should present the magical elements in the form of a gear in a wheel. Jan was surprised and asked what the gears were, right? Herod said they have 2 of these and they are completely identical. However, if you move them together, they will stop moving, right? And now, instead of gears, let him introduce a magic element. Jan said he understood. If you divide the body parts, you can effectively use muscle training for each of the groups. That's pretty good, isn't it? Herod said no, because it's bunkatsu how. Jan hugged him and said that after training their brains, it was time to train their body as well. Herod thought how annoying he was. Jan said they had the same class tomorrow. Sometime later, at the Academy's training center, the teacher of the new subject said that today they have a class on the practice of magic combat. They will need to pair up and fight in a simulated battle for an hour. Everything is very simple. They will conduct an assessment of combat skills in order to match them. The evaluation criterion will be their ability to defend themselves, and for those who pass the creative exam and for everyone else. Then they will start with a special student. Herod came forward and said it was fine. At that moment, when Hadar's name was already mentioned and everyone realized that he was going to show his skills now, everyone began to discuss something. Or rather, Hadar himself, which clearly did not please him. The guy said it was the first time he would see a battle up close. The girl asked if he was good at fighting. Herod was very tense and scared, and his classmates were also staring at him in anticipation of some kind of spectacle. So he was very restless. He didn't really like that the others would be watching all this, so he thought it would be hard. He also looked at Jasmine, who, like everyone else, was admiring all this, and thought that even Jasmine was watching him. And he really doesn't want her to notice his awkwardness. And it seems that he is really worried. It only made him more nervous. But 2 of his already close enough friends supported him in every way, and did not even hide this. Ian told Cecilia that it was their boy who was able to create adamant out of thin air. Cecilia supported him and said that it was true, while calling him a prince. She asked what he would give away this time. Harada, it didn't make me happy at all. He looked at them with displeasure and thought that this was all fun. The professor got mad at them and said that the 2 of them were too noisy. After that, she turned to Herod and said that they would get down to business. She would increase the power of her magic with each strike, so he had to focus on his defense. Herod said he understood her. He himself thought that he would try very hard, however. He is not sure that the reverse phase will block her magic. Then the professor told him that it would not be quite easy. Herod looked at her in surprise and asked if that was really the case. The woman prepared for the attack and said that they would start with the strongest blow. Herod became very nervous and asked why they wouldn't do it gradually. The boy was terrified, scared, and thought that he had no other way out. He applied his analysis and thought he could see everything. After that, he calmed down a little and already acted more confidently. He put his hand forward to block the blow and thought it was reverse magic and activated it. The professor said with a grin that they would see if he could handle it. However, the boy easily repelled the attack of this professor, without even moving from his place. Everything happened so fast that no one even really understood anything, as if nothing had happened at all. For a moment, even the professor herself froze in surprise. And after that, she said that didn't her magic work? Was it because she was dealing with a monstrous student? The woman clearly began to get nervous and worried. Herod was a little offended by this, and he thought it was monstrous, right? Hadn't he imagined it? But still, despite all this, he was pleased with himself and thought that at least his hypothesis was confirmed. Apparently, he still decided to check out what he had read in the book and the lesson, although it was a little dangerous. But clearly not for Herod. Jan, who has been pulling dumbbells all this time, said that he was so happy. And he said it as if he was already used to it, and Herod's abilities and skills were no longer something unusual for him. Cecilia agreed with him on this and said yes. He's done something there again. Jasmine stuttered a little and said that it was something so incredible. They're not even going to get that, are they? The girl saw it all for the first time, so it's clear that for her it was something incredible. Jan apparently did not bother at all, and he still, with the same smile and continues to train, told her that he thought she was right. Herod looked at this and, clearly not very pleased with what he saw, thought that they should not bother Jasmine. Everything is against him here. But apparently, their professor was not going to stop there, as she still did not want to lose to the student, and told her Herod that she was very sorry that everything had turned out like this. But they would try again. Herod was not at all ready for this, and already wanted to tell her something. However, due to the fact that he was very nervous, he could not gather his thoughts, but still said that he would be able to do it again. The woman didn't even let him finish anything, as she didn't really explain anything to him, but immediately attacked him. But despite the fact that he was extremely nervous, he managed to block his professor's attack again. Or rather, the same thing happened that happened on the first attempt. It was as if the woman had not been able to use her magic against Herod at all, so everything remained in its place as before. Their professor was very confused and asked what the hell. What about her magic? Even none of the students said anything anymore. Everyone was just in shock. After that, several more attempts followed. Well, in the end, she never managed to hurt the boy in any way. Herod was still standing there, as if nothing had happened. All the other students also froze and were stunned by everything that was happening. None of them understood anything. Herod, seeing the reaction of his teacher, ran up to the professor and was about to tell her something. But the woman interrupted him and said that she was so useless. But he's also called the homeroom teacher. She wiped her tears and said that she was resigning today. Apparently with all this, Herod, not wanting it in any way, but still drove the poor woman. All the other students were just shocked by this statement and thought that he had even brought her to tears. Everyone just froze. Herod himself was shocked by this because he did not want this at all. He told the professor that there was no need to quit so soon. The woman said that she couldn't do it so easily, because what's the point of learning from someone who doesn't know how to handle magic? Herod said that wasn't the point at all. He just interfered with the activation of magic, that's all. She's still there. The professor stared at him in surprise. Now she was already very angry and said that it was such an impudence. Herod felt even more awkward about it and apologized to her. The professor came up to him and began to scold him. She asked what did she say to get into activation? How did it even happen? Herod was shaking all over from such pressure from the teacher and said that he had read about it in a book and decided to just try it. The woman said that she should try it. But after that, she calmed down a bit and said that interfering with magic circles, right? And how did he manage to master this technique at such an age? Don't let him use it anymore, okay? But shouldn't activating interfering magic take longer to master? He could try a steam cocoon type spell that has no harmful magic in it. Herod shook his head negatively and said no, he's not like that. He figured out how to use magic a little differently. The woman stared at him questioningly and with interest in it. Herod said something that he did was not as difficult as a magical intervention. He simply neutralized the magic when he hit it with an element in the opposite phase. Magic is powerful, but not very powerful. This is a simple pain technique. The woman started yelling at him again and asked what he was talking about. Even this is difficult. After that, she sighed heavily and said that she was already tired, so she didn't care anymore. Well, then they will say so. His results remain questionable, but he is still a better student. Herod said that this was too vague an outcome. Jan smiled and said that it was quite normal, considering all his capabilities. Cecilia also smiled at him and said it wasn't a big deal, was it? Herod got mad at them for the first time and asked them if they were having fun, right? Then Jasmine came up to them, who told Herod that he was still one, so he shouldn't worry so much. Herod said it was good. He was thinking. Jasmine smiled at him and said that's what she was telling him. After all, being the best student is not just a show-off. Herod said not at all. He is still very far from this rank, so he still has a lot to learn. Jasmine stared at him a little offended and asked why he was only talking to her in an official form. Herod looked away and said that there were reasons for this. Cecilia, who had heard the whole conversation, thought she was interested in it too. Jasmine told Herod that he should just not address himself as you. There's nothing wrong with that. Herod called her by her first name and said that it was good. Cecilia thought that Herod and Lady Jasmine were still talking, and why is she so worried about it? And after that, the professor invited the next student to test him now. But then a feather fell from the sky right into her palm. The woman looked at him in surprise and asked if it was really a feather. She was very scared of something and said that it wasn't there. It just couldn't be. Herod went up to her and asked what happened there. And after that, they looked up and saw a huge griffin there. It was a chimera monster that had the body of an eagle and the lower part of a lion. The professor was incredibly scared and said that this was the strongest monster that even an adventurer of rank A could not defeat. But he had to fly much higher. After that, the griffin growled. The woman addressed all the students and told them to listen to her carefully. Their fights are suspended. They have to be very careful. If he hooks them with his claws, they will be finished. But what to do? Because he's flying right at them. All the students who are currently in this class raised their heads up and stared at that monster. One of the students said that if he attacked them, it would be over. Another asked that they were his prey now, right? Everyone was terrified, scared, and didn't know what would happen next. Jan tried to keep his face straight, but he was shaking with fear and uncertainty. And he asked what they were talking about. Hadar calmly came forward and said that if he grabbed them, it would definitely be the end. He said with a smile that they should finish him off faster than he would. The professor was horrified and misunderstood by his student, and was told that she did not understand whether he was a genius or super dumb. However, the griffin was not going to wait for them to act and did it one. The monster rushed forward directly at the group of students. The professor said that he was already very close. They must avoid him at all costs. After that, this griffin flashed past them. The professor immediately turned to her students and asked if they were all right. Cecilia told her that Jasmine, The professor stared at the girl in horror and asked what. Kandar immediately understood what was going on. So I looked at that griffin, which had already managed to take off, and saw Jasmine scared to death in its paws. Hadar stared at this monster and immediately began to recall all the information about him in order to understand how best to act in such a difficult situation. He thought that the griffin was considered a high-ranking monster for a reason. And it's not just his vitality and high combat abilities, but also his intelligence. Griffins choose weak and vulnerable victims and scare the rest so that they run away. It won't be too difficult to deal with this griffin. After which, he turned his gaze to Jasmine and thought that, however, what if Jasmine got hurt by this? He can fly closer to it, however. If something goes wrong, then he will have to save his mana. Get closer. At that moment, the boy seemed to have an idea. He turned to Jan, who by a lucky chance happened to be right next to him, and asked him what the gravity control device was, because he had it now, didn't he? Jan looked at his friend and said yes. He has it with him now. Hadar asked if he could borrow it for a while. Jan immediately handed over this device to his friend. Hadar took this device and said that he would stop the decrease in gravity to the maximum, and his task was to throw it to the griffin. The boy himself thought that he really wanted to save his mana as a last resort. Jan got scared and asked a friend if he was sure it would work at all. Hadar coolly said that they didn't have any time for this, and only he could help him with it, and his strength, so please let him help him. He must save Jasmine. After that, Hadar activated his device, and Jan prepared to send his friend as high into the sky as possible, and said that they were off. Immediately after that, Hadar was launched straight into the sky and aimed at the griffin. Everyone else who stayed on Earth was just watching everything that was happening. The professor said, "What the hell is the victim doing? He's too stupid and too smart." Hadar had already gotten close enough to this monster and thought that from this distance, he would definitely not hit Jasmine. After that, he resorted to his magic and said that let it pierce him. The boy used his dragon flame, which he learned from his mother, and with this magic, he hit exactly the target. The griffin shuddered, and Jasmine felt it, who was still right in his paws. The girl began to look around questioningly and asked, "What is going on here?" And then she felt the griffin's paw begin to weaken. Jasmine froze and right in the next second fell out of the clutches of this huge griffin and flew straight down. The girl already thought that everything would be over for her. However, at the last second, Hadar arrived to help her, who caught the girl and asked her with a smile if she was injured. The girl stared at him in surprise, as if she hadn't expected to see Hadar here. After all, the boy himself had recently been near the griffin, and now he had already managed to catch her right at the ground. Jasmine asked him that how did he end up here in the first place? She was in the sky. Hadar said Jan dropped him off here. Now he can use the magic of flight so that they can land gently, so let her hold on tight. Jasmine looked at him in great surprise and asked if he was definitely human. And just as they were about to go back to the surface of their land, the griffin flew up to them again, which was ready to attack them, because he was still alive and well. Hadar still reacted calmly to everything, as if it wasn't happening to him at all, and said that he was too gentle with him. This griffin is injured, of course, but it can still fight. Jasmine closed her eyes and asked that he was gentle, right? Hadar resorted to his magic again, and said it was time to finish off this griffin. After that, he used his magic called rapid-fire dragon flame. The griffin was repeatedly attacked by this magic, so it would hardly be able to survive after such a thing. The griffin was completely defeated, and now the rest of the students were no longer in danger. Jasmine stared at the griffin, which began to fall down, and said that it was just incredible. Hirad said he was very glad that he was on time. He looked at the girl and said that if something had happened, he would not have been able to look her father in the eye. Jasmine just stared at him in embarrassment, and after that they arrived back on Earth again. Hadar and Jasmine landed right next to the griffin's body, and everyone else immediately ran up to them. The professor ran ahead of everyone and asked her students what they were like. Hadar said they were fine. Jasmine confirmed this and said that nothing like that had happened to them. The professor just hugged her students. She told Hadar that he was flying in the sky, killed a griffin with some of his incredible magic. She still has so many questions for him. Hadar had already imagined what was waiting for him and thought that a mountain of questions would be better for later. The professor said that, however, now she is just very glad that they are both alive, and may they forgive her for her incompetence. If it ever happens to her again, she will definitely protect them. After that, she turned to Hadar again and said that she thought it was worth giving him all the points for compulsory discipline, including combat magic itself. She wants to discuss this with the director right now. Hadar was shocked and stared at his professor in surprise. He asked her what it all meant. The woman said that everything was very simple. She herself sighed heavily and asked what else she could teach him, and the other teachers would probably think the same, as she did. Hadar apparently did not agree with this at all and thought it was just nonsense. The professor told him quite seriously that he would rather teach her something new than she would teach him. Hadar, who still couldn't figure out how truly incredible he was, thought he didn't understand anything at all. The professor said that, of course, she knows that it sounds very strange. But suddenly something like this will happen again, and she really wants to be ready, and it would be better to turn to him for advice. Hadar still didn't really understand all this and wondered why it would be him. Jan supported his professor's words and said that he also really wanted to learn more from him. Cecilia was also with them, on the first side, and said yes. Hadar stared at them in complete shock and asked if they were laughing at him. He himself wondered when the two of them had even managed to become friends. The professor has already addressed all her students who attended this lesson and said that she will deal with the consequences of this attack, and now let them all rest. Until the next lesson. Hadar thought it was time to clear this area now. The boy looked incredibly lost, and he was probably very embarrassed about all this that had happened. And just at that moment, Jasmine came up to him in order to thank him for saving her and said that he was her real savior. Hadar was very embarrassed because of this. He said that it was not worth calling him that. Jasmine said that, however, she did not know how to thank him for it. She could only express it in words. Hadar was not at all against this and said that in that case he would be very happy if they became friends. Jasmine looked at him in great surprise. And after that, to his great surprise, she began to scold herself. The girl said very loudly that what a fool she was. She's saying such awkward things to him here. Hadar was even startled by surprise and asked what was awkward, right? Jasmine apparently looked down in embarrassment and thought that, why could he offer friendship to someone so easily? The girl blushed all over and thought that she should have said it. But it doesn't matter anymore. After that, the girl gathered her thoughts and told him that. However, if he needed any help from her, then let her know about it. Hadar continued to stare at the girl in surprise, not understanding what was on her mind at all. Jasmine said that if he needed the money, she would give it to him without any hesitation. She herself thought that her father would be very happy. Hadar, on the contrary, was very embarrassed because of this, and it is unlikely that he will ever turn her for such a strange request. He thought that she had suddenly started acting like the daughter of the company. Jasmine said that they should already go, because their next class will start very soon. The girl apparently took him by the hand and began to lead him. Hadar told her not to pull him like that. Soon after, their entire class moved back to the classroom, where the next professor was already waiting for them. All the students took their seats and began to listen attentively to the new teacher. The professor said that he had already heard about the incident from Professor CL. It is very surprising that no one was injured, and this is a great success. After that, the man turned back to the blackboard and said that then they should continue their lesson. They should open their notes. Hadar was a little surprised by the professor's calm reaction, and thought he was so calm. The professor drew a magic circle on the blackboard and said that today their lesson would be devoted to alchemy. They will all try to create a crystal at the same time, using the magic circle from their textbook. At the same time, they will have to carefully pour sand on the circle. While the professor was explaining their assignment to everyone, Hadar had already prepared everything and said that everything was ready. Cecilia and Jasmine stared at their friend in complete shock and said how fast he was. Jasmine even rebuked him a little and told him not to run ahead of the locomotive. Hadar asked what she was talking about. Jasmine herself turned her attention to Jan, who even in such a situation did not stop training, and asked him why he was training at such a moment. Jan said quite calmly, before continuing to train, that he did not draw well. He won't even be able to draw a circle. And it doesn't matter if it's ordinary or magical. Jasmina turned to Cecilia and said, while looking at Hadar, that they had a special student on the first side. After that, she looked at Ian and said that, and on the other side there is one prince who just loves training. She looked at the girl and asked what was hard for her with these two, right? Cecilia said she appreciated her kindness very much. At these words, Cecilia actually cried and said that she was so glad that at least she understood her. Jasmine asked that they would help each other, right? Hadar frowned and thought that he was already starting to get stressed out and scared of their union. Ian didn't pay any attention to them at all and just continued to train. Jasmine couldn't stand it and addressed them sternly. She said they should get to work by now. On the same night, after all classes, a banquet was organized for the students. Hadar and John were just delighted with everything that was happening here. They immediately looked at all the tables, which were just chock full of various delicious dishes. They said it looked incredibly delicious. And then, at the head of the table, they saw the head of the griffin that Hadar had defeated in class. Hadar was a little annoyed by this, and he asked what and why is it even here. He thought that it was very difficult to eat when such a huge man was looking at him directly. Maybe he miscalculated, but John just didn't care about it. He was already helping himself to a whole mountain of meat, and said that this was probably his protein paradise. Then his teacher came up to Hadar and said that she never thought she would see griffin meat on the menu of the welcome celebration. Hadar tensed up and asked what she didn't like. The woman said no, it's just that it's considered a luxury delicacy. It is very rare to see it, and even more so if there is one. But can she, without doing anything, taste this meat? Jan said that, of course. After all, it is impossible for such a yummy thing to disappear. The woman said that since the prince himself tells her to, she believes that she simply has no choice. Hadar approached John and thanked him for his help today. He said he threw it right on target. John smiled and said, "You're welcome." And now what is he going to do next? Hadar stared at him questioningly. Yana grinned and said that he shouldn't make a fool of himself. It's about Jasmine. Jan came closer to him and, almost in a whisper, said that he deliberately wanted to put himself at such a risk and help her, right? Hadar didn't understand what he was talking about at all, and said that it wasn't like that at all. He doesn't want to disappoint. And then suddenly, Jasmine appeared in front of her, who asked, "Is there really something wrong with her?" They're whispering so sweetly behind her back. Hadar had not expected to see her here and right now, so he was very surprised by this. When Jasmine Wu saw their expressions, she asked if they were really serious about her. Hadar said there was nothing like that. Jasmine clearly didn't believe him, and asked if he was sure about it. Jan said that, well, it's true. Since the moment they met, Hadar just never ceases to amaze. Jasmine agreed with him and said that it was true. There are always some miracles from him. Hadar said that it was not for him to talk about the miracle. Jasmine and Ian looked at him questioningly. Hadar said that until he came to this academy, he lived one with his mother in the mountains. He didn't want to leave her so much, but after enrolling, he was able to make great friends so quickly, and every day spent with them is so intense. It is worth saying that this is more like a miracle than any magic. Thank you so much for being his friend. Jasmine and Ian were very confused after his words. Hadar noticed their strange reaction and asked, "What is the matter with them?" Ian looked away from embarrassment and said that he was really just something. He says such embarrassing things to them. Hadar, on the contrary, saw nothing wrong with it. Jasmine was also very confused and told him to think what he was saying. Now Hadar felt very uncomfortable and wondered if he had blurted something out again. Yang turned to Jasmine and said that, by the way, the blush on her cheeks. "It's all because of Har's words, isn't it?" Jasmine asked what was he even hinting at. Then Jan came closer to her in order to whisper something in her ear, which made Jasmine incredibly embarrassed and yelled at him. She told him that he was a jerk. Hadar got scared and asked, "What did he say?" Jasmine began to scold Yang and said that he was still the prince of this country. Is there really not a drop of delicacy and tact in his muscular head? Jan said that when you fall in love, the world around you just transforms. Jasmine said it was none of his business anyway. Hadar tried to calm them down and told the two of them to calm down already. Then Jasmine had already yelled at him and asked what he thought. Who was all this fuss about? Hadar was confused and turned to Cecilia for help. And at that moment, it only dawned on him that she was not there with him. He looked around and asked, "Where is Cecilia?" He hadn't seen her for a long time. Where did she go? At the same time, Cecilia was very close to this hall and was clearly suffering from severe headaches. She grabbed her head and said it hurt a lot. Meeting after class. Hadar stayed in the classroom for a while after all the main classes in order to work out individually with the professor. He stared at his professor and asked her that she was worried about the future, right? The woman sighed heavily and said that his sarcasm was clearly superfluous here. She won't put up with this. Hadar said he wanted to discuss something, and it was clear from his expression that he was obviously very worried about it. He said he didn't know what he wanted to do in the future. Jasmine and Yang have already decided on this for a long time, and he's a little nervous about it. The professor told him that these two were just an exception, and he could become whatever he wanted. Well, if he needs a clear answer so badly, then she thinks... After that, the woman thought for a while and said that she thought he should try himself in different directions, and then decide which he would like the most of it all. And she even has an offer for him already. Soon, on the advice of his teacher, he went to some meeting, where some students also gathered. There, the girl told him that some will take a course on managing orders that are related to potions, and other tasks that are related to them. There are also other classes where they will study and treat mild cases. They can choose any one. As for the practice, at the moment it can only be done by those who have already mastered the magic of healing. Herod was obviously interested in all this, and said that he would like to try it then. And then he noticed Cecilia. He was very surprised when he saw her here, and the girl herself was also surprised. Cecilia asked him what he was doing here. Herod said that he asked the teacher about his professional development, and she advised him to come here. He was very happy to see them and said that she was here too. How glad he was. Cecilia did not share this delight with him and said that now she was worried. Next to him, she remains a gray mouse. Herod was surprised and asked that she wanted him to leave, right? Cecilia said she would switch to this course anyway, and after that they went to the infirmary at the church. The women told them that they would come straight to the point. Here, they will treat patients. However, she asks them to deal with only light cases. The symptoms will be completely different and abdominal pain, cough, and wounds. But most importantly, they must remain calm, and then there will be no problems. If they need any help, there are always people on duty nearby, so don't hesitate to consult with them. Herod and Cecilia said it was fine. After these girls left and were to let them show their skills, Cecilia turned to him and seriously told them that they should do everything in their power. Herod was very glad that she would have had his attitude and said that he could feel the motivation coming from her. She will definitely be able to do it completely. Cecilia said that she really wants to finally get a part-time job. And, after that, each of them approached their patient whom they had to look at. Cecilia's patient asked her if he would really get attention from such a beautiful girl today. Cecilia was embarrassed by his words and asked if he was really beautiful. The man said that he was telling her honestly. One just looking at her is enough to heal. Cecilia was incredibly embarrassed and said that she would do everything in her power because he was still her first patient. The man clearly did not expect such a turn, and a girl came running to a loud sound and asked what was going on here. The man had already lost consciousness by this time. Cecilia did not know what to do in such a situation and simply began to apologize to him. She said she would use the magic that would suit his symptoms. Could he tell her what was bothering him? She was terribly worried. The man said they would start from the critical areas. Cecilia said that he should choose his expressions. Herod, who was now behind the screen and heard everything perfectly, thought that she should not worry so much. After that, he already turned directly to his patient and said that which spell works the most effectively. It will be a big problem if he picks up a bad treatment. So the boy seriously thought about it, and after a couple of seconds, a brilliant idea came to mind. And he said that everything was ready. His patient thanked him and said that his knee was already much better. Herod asked if there was anything else that was bothering him. The patient said yes, and I asked him to wait a second. After that, the patient said that he could see better. Not only did his sprain heal, but his runny nose also went away. The scratches also healed and the skin became much cleaner. Cecilia, who also heard everything perfectly, said that it was just miracles. She couldn't contain her curiosity and looked behind the screen, saying that she wondered what he had been doing all this time. Herod continued his treatment and told the patient that then he would continue his perfect healing. Cecilia was incredibly surprised by what she saw and asked if it was really advanced healing magic, and when he was done with his patient, Cecilia came up to him and told him that he shouldn't have used such a spell on a patient with incurable problems. Herod said that, however, there are no rules, because what kind of magic can be used, right? But on the other hand, everything will be fine with the person now. Cecilia said it was a wasteful use of high magic. Of course, the patient is getting much better. But it looks like even the assistants are shocked. She thinks he just broke her. Herod couldn't understand their strange reaction to all this, and asked that it was just effective magic, wasn't it? Just in case, he just double-checks if there are any more symptoms after his treatment. Cecilia said he was doing everything wrong. The girl calmed down a little and said that it was okay, let's say, but wasn't he tired after that? Herod said no, he was fine. But wasn't he tired after that? Herod said no, he was fine. And his mana is restored approximately immediately after consumption, and now it is almost running out. Cecilia said she didn't understand anything anymore. Okay, all this is just because he's a Herod. It will be much easier for her to explain it all in this way. Herod started arguing with her and said that he was just an ordinary person. Cecilia asked that, how is this even possible? Ordinary people can't just use magic called perfect healing. Herod said there might be more like it. Soon an assistant intervened in their argument, who had already recovered by this time, and told the two of them to stop it already. What she means is, of course, she understands that the two of them are friends, and everything is the same, but they still have a job. Cecilia and Herod immediately came to their senses and apologized to her. Cecilia went back to her small office behind the screen and told him that they should do their best. Herod smiled at her and said that he would definitely be able to do it. At that moment, the girl felt a severe headache again, and even lost her balance and fell to the floor. Herod immediately ran up to her and asked if she was okay. Cecilia said yes, she just had a headache. This happens to her a lot, so don't let him worry. However, immediately after that, the girl had such a severe headache that she simply could not restrain herself. She completely fell to the floor and started screaming loudly because of the hellish pain. Other assistants came running to these screams, who asked what kind of screams they were. Herod told them that when they were about to return to their seats, she grabbed her head and fell to the floor, and he did not know what was wrong with her. The assistants said they would sort it out. After that, the girl analyzed it and said that it was not just a headache. They must use the strongest healing magic. After that, several assistants immediately used their higher healing to constrict blood vessels. However, even this did not alleviate Cecilia's suffering in any way. The assistant herself no longer knew what to do and said that they could not do anything, and the situation was already getting out of control. Then, Herod took the situation into his own hands. He approached his girlfriend and thought that he knew that this was an inappropriate act in front of everyone else. However, he simply could not stand by. After that, he applied his perfect healing and the girl immediately felt better. Herod asked her how she was feeling. Cecilia said she was fine, so thank him for that. But even the perfect healing briefly eased her suffering, and she felt a hellish pain in her head again. Hadar himself was surprised that it did not help in any way and asked if it was really just a temporary effect. The assistant also measures shock and surprise. She was told that even such strong magic cannot heal pain. Maybe it's a cumulative pain? These words made Hadar think about it. The boy thought it was known as a suicide headache. They arise suddenly, and a person cannot even predict when it will appear and when it will stop. One example is that even the omnipotent ideal healing has no power here. He looked back at Cecilia, who was still suffering from an incredible headache, and thought that, however, these pains, there is still one solution. After that, he resorted to his magic again and created several magic circles around the perimeter. The assistant was incredibly surprised and said that it was a magic circle. This can't be happening. One saint spends an hour creating ritual circles, but the chance of activation is 99%. Hadar hugged Cecilia in order for the magic to work better and said that in exchange for the huge expenditure of magical power, he would be able to negate all her injuries and painful sensations. When he gained enough magical power, he applied his magic called absolute healing. Cecilia felt much better after that. The girl was finally able to breathe calmly and thought that her pain was receding. Hadar continued to use this magic all this time so that the pain would not return. Cecilia looked up and saw that he was hugging her, so she hugged him back with a smile. Soon after, the girl finally recovered. Hadar seriously asked her that she was okay now, right? Cecilia felt much better already and said yes. The assistant came up to them and asked how is this even possible. She doesn't believe that he was able to use absolute healing. After that, all the assistants who were allocated to their group turned to him. The girls bowed to him and thanked him for saving this girl. They said that her healing should have been their responsibility. Hadar felt very uncomfortable about this and said that he was asking them to raise their heads. After all, he just wanted to help and did only what he could do. Let them forgive him if he suddenly exceeded his authority. He needed to ask their permission first. The assistant stared at him in surprise and asked if he really didn't blame them. How noble of him. Now this girl addressed him in a different way, calling him Lord, and said that he was the incarnation of the Lord on mortal earth. Cecilia joined in the girl's words and said that was for sure. Hadar looked at his friend and asked why she agreed with them. After the internship, their working day had already come to an end, so these assistants let them go. Cecilia held a small bag of gold coins in her hands and happily said that although they caused a stir, they were rewarded in full. Hadar did not seem to pay any attention to her words at all, but continued to look at his books. The girl drew attention to this and asked why he needed a collection of questions for the healing exam. Hadar put his books in his storage and said that he was being offered to take the exam right now. Cecilia said that if he passed it, then he would be able to receive an additional reward as a healer already, right? For him, it will just be a trivial matter. Hadar didn't really agree with her on this, and said she was saying that because she hadn't come across it. Cecilia suddenly felt very awkward in front of him, so she turned to him and apologized for today. Hadar was very surprised when he heard that she was apologizing for such things and said that it wasn't her fault at all, so she shouldn't apologize. The girl did not agree with him and said that it was not true. She just teased them a lot, and they had a little fight. It's the first time they've been alone in a long time, and she seemed a little carried away. Hadar looked at the girl in embarrassment. Cecilia said that, and most importantly, he saved her from a cumulative headache, so thank him very much for that. She still couldn't quite believe it all, and said that Hadar had healed her. She lived in fear every day, wondering when it would happen to her again. But thanks to him, it was now like a dream. The truth is that during the internship she wanted to help those who suffer from any problems, even if they are not significant. Hadar smiled and said he thought she did a great job with it, and he also thinks that she saved him. Now the girl looked at him questioningly and in surprise. Hadar recalled his first day when he first arrived at this academy and said that during the entrance exams, when he needed support, she helped and encouraged him. Cecilia did not see anything unusual in this and said that she could not leave him. Hadar thought about it and already told her with some reproach that, however, she seemed to have started teasing him from that very day. Cecilia knew perfectly well that this was exactly the case, so she felt a little awkward and said that he was just imagining it for himself. Don't let him say that. Hadar said that, however, he was really happy to help her, because she is a special person to him. The appearance of one friend really feels like something special. The girl was incredibly embarrassed by his words and even blushed. She told him not to say such things. Hadar was a little scared by her reaction, and he asked what he had said to her again. The girl turned away from him out of great embarrassment and asked why he was telling her this. Although, in fact, she was incredibly happy to hear these words and thought that she was special, right? He is also a special person to her, however. Her meaning of the word special differs from his. Someday she would definitely be able to confess her feelings to him. While the girl was thinking about it, yes. She finally caught up with her and asked if her face was really red. Cecilia said it was all because of him. Hadar was scared and asked if he had really left something untreated after all. Is there even something that absolute treatment is not able to fix? They need to sort this out as soon as possible. Cecilia tried to calm him down and said that it was nothing like that. It just happens. The next day, they all showed up for the professor's class again. The girl told them that there was practice in the dungeons using fencing and magic in class today. They should all split up into groups of 3. This will also be the practice of working in a group at the same time, and that is why they should split into groups of 3 people. Hadar started to get very nervous just because of this and thought, what are the bans? What should he do? Hadar, who grew up among the ancient dragons in the mountains, had no experience in group activities, and he did not understand it. Hadar started to panic a lot because of this and thought that he didn't have many friends, only Jasmine and Cecilia. He would like to call Jan, but if he is refused, but what if they were already planning to form a threesome group? He should try to call someone. It shouldn't be more difficult than the exam itself. However, right at that moment, Jan suddenly came up to him from behind, who hugged his friend and said that Hadar had been caught. Hadar was even startled by surprise and said that it was a soft feeling. He turned around and saw Ian there, so he calmed down a bit right after that. Jan patted him on the shoulder and said that, of course, his ways of remembering were strange. Well, in short, they should unite. Hadar was so nervous about it that he even burst into tears and said that he was only happy. Jan was very surprised by his reaction, and he asked what he was doing. What happened? Hadar said he was just so glad he was invited. Jan asked, is it really even to tears? He understood everything, so don't let him cry. He thought it would be possible to invite Jasmine or Cecilia, and one person is enough for me. And right at that moment, they already heard a familiar voice. It was Jasmine who was asking someone to calm down. Several students approached her at once and suggested that she join a group. The guy came up and said that they should work in group 1. The other guy said she should team up with him and let him not interrupt her. Jasmine didn't want them to fight, so she said they could have a threesome as long as they didn't fight. The guys were very happy about it, and one of them said that he was so glad that they would work together. Jan, along with a gift, stared at the whole picture with some horror and thought that it had already been taken away. However, at that moment, the guys started arguing again. One of them said that he also shouted one. Another said that they said it almost at the same time, so what difference does it make? Jasmine told them to stop fighting already. Jan sighed and said that she was still popular. Hadar smiled and said that Jasmine was always like that. But then, after that, he began to look for Cecilia, and soon found her. Their gazes crossed, and the girl, out of embarrassment, immediately looked away, but Hadar misunderstood her. Because of this, the boy began to worry a lot again and asked his friend what he should do. If you think about it, then after the internship, he is a little avoided. Jan just shrugged and told him not to be afraid, because he wasn't avoiding him. Hadar asked what he was talking about. Does he have nothing in his head but muscles anymore, or what? Jan said how rude it was. For Hadar, who grew up among the ancient dragons in the mountains, such a thing would not be considered an insult. Jan sighed heavily again and said that he would find someone for them. Hadar asked him very uncertainly if it was accurate. Then Cecilia came up to them and said that she had heard that they were missing a man. Would they mind taking her in? Hadar was very happy about this and thought that reverse psychology was in the works. What a smug face she has. After everyone was distributed, they went back to the teacher. The woman said that she sees that they have all separated, then they all go to the dungeon. On the left side of the Zelgis's academy, the forest stretches untouched by anyone, and it was through this forest that they came to the dungeon itself. Jan looked around carefully all the way and said that there were such magnificent ruins near the school, he couldn't even believe it. All the students stopped at the entrance, and they stood in silence at the entrance to the dungeon. Hadar himself was incredibly surprised by all this, and said that it was expected from the best school in the kingdom of Zelgius. The woman said that then they would start with groups that were already ready to go. 1. There was also a Lux teacher whose specialty was fencing. Lux said that he would briefly tell them about the dungeon. The interior of the dungeon consists of floors. The study is allowed only up to the 10th floor. And, of course, there are various monsters in this dungeon. Those who have passed the school entrance exam will be able to cope with this test without any problems, but let them still not relax their vigilance. He suggests they get started as soon as possible. Then their teacher turned to their team and said that they were 3, or rather Hadar. Let him come to her. Hadar immediately approached his teachers, and the girl told him that she thought it was, of course, quite obvious, but he was forbidden to participate. Hadar was completely shocked and asked, "Why is this?" Lux asked him with some reproach that had he already forgotten how he broke his sword in the fencing exam. Hadar said that, however, he rarely gets in. The woman said that, in short, if he went with them, he would fight for the 3 of them. Hadar got upset and thought that it wasn't fair. The woman said that, however, there is one option for them. They will limit it. He can only come up with a strategy, give instructions, and look for an opponent. If he breaks these rules, they will all be disqualified. Jan, along with Cecilia, said at the same time that they had no objections. However, Hadar himself had a different opinion and said that he objected. Lux said that, however, there would be an exception if there was danger for the 2 of them. Then the rules can be broken so that no one gets hurt. Jan, along with Cecilia, also supported this idea, and at the same time said that everything is for points. Hadar just stared at them in shock and thought that he had just been ignored. Well, they'll do fine with him anyway. Cecilia asked that, why don't they decide on the roles before they start exploring this dungeon? Jan supported her and said it was a very good idea. The girl herself said that she likes the rear guard. Jan said that of course, and he was in the vanguard. And then Hadar will be searching for enemies. Hadar smiled and said he had no choice anyway. But then I thought about something and asked the teachers what. But wouldn't they be limited to only one role in this case? The woman agreed with him and said that it was true. It's not quite right if they can't open up from different sides. Lux asked that, in that case, what about giving the 2 of them the weapon that suits them best? The woman said it was a great idea. A strong Yang will then use a warhammer with great destructive power. And since Cecilia still has a poor command of fencing, a dagger is convenient for her to use. Lux turned to Hadar and told him to make them. Of course, it's very powerful. Let him not do it either. Hadar wondered if he was just being used here. However, he didn't have much choice, so he created a suitable weapon for the 2 of them. Jan was quite satisfied with his weapon and was very happy. He said that, as expected from Hadar's alchemy. This is the best hammer. Hadar said he was very glad that he liked it. After that, he turned to the girl and asked her what her weapon was like. Is it well done? Cecilia was also very pleased and said that he was just perfect. And besides, it is very light and looks easy to use. Hadar said that, by the way, daggers can also be used as projectiles. The girl said they were just universal. Hadar said he was very sorry that he couldn't make more of them. Jan said no. That would be more than enough. Hadar said that was fine then. He himself thought that then the next task was to find the enemies. The enemy can be easily found with the help of detection magic, but the only problem is how to communicate this information to his team member. They had already entered this dungeon and Hadar came up with a brilliant idea, and he said that for sure. After that, he used some of his magic, and an incredibly huge map appeared in front of them. Jan asked, "What is it?" Cecilia asked, "What is this card really?" Hadar said it was true. This is a map of this dungeon, and he used light magic to show where the enemies are. Ian, along with Cecilia, were also shocked by his magic, and at the same time, thought that he was really doing something impossible again. Hadar said that this is where they are now, and this is the staircase. The girl said that even its designations are very clear. Hadar said that these large circles represent the enemy's positions. The difference in the shape of the symbol means the strength of the monster. If they are interested in a difference, then the order is like this. A triangle is weaker than an ordinary circle, but the circle itself is weaker than a double circle. Jan said it was intuitive. Hadar said that if they use this as a guideline and plan strategies, then they will be able to act safely and very effectively. Jan asked if it was still too much, and then the girl told them that the enemy triangle would soon approach them. Ian prepared to attack, and then 3 goblins appeared in front of them. The guy said they were goblins. They are very well suited for warming up. Jan tightened his grip on his brand new hammer, and, already preparing to attack, said that he was so eager to try out this weapon in real combat. Cecilia was also already ready for battle, and told him that she would cover for him. Herod, who was fighting, wished them luck and thought that he also really wanted to fight with them. Well, in the end, the research went smoothly thanks to the Harada map. Ian and Cecilia defeated all the enemies that were in their way, and Herod only trailed behind them. Herod looked incredibly sad and upset, and thought that he also really wanted to do something already. And as a result, after a while, they had already arrived on the 10th floor together. Herod opened his map again to see what awaited them next. Ian said that he would never have thought that they would reach the deepest floor so quickly. It hasn't even been 30 minutes yet. Cecilia said that, as expected from Herod, although he does not participate in battles, he was still able to help them very much. She glanced at Herod briefly and said that, however, it felt like he was in withdrawal. Jan also looked at his friend and said it was so scary. Herod kept saying to himself that he wanted to defeat monsters. He wants to use magic. After that, he looked at his map and noticed movement there. So he told his companions that the enemy was approaching. A double circle. Jan picked up his weapon again and said it was very good. They have to deal with them. Cecilia also looked very ready for battle and said yes. And soon goblins appeared in front of them. But this time there were much more of them than in the previous one. Jan said that this time they came in a crowd. Herod tried to stay behind, although it was very difficult for him, because he still strongly wanted to take part in the battle with them. And then Jan drew attention to one goblin, and said that there was also one huge one among them. Cecilia said it was a hobgoblin, and he was of average level. Ian asked, "Is this really the boss of this group of goblins?" At that moment, Herod seemed to have an idea, and he didn't say anything to them, just shielded them from him. He told his teammates that he was different from their previous enemies, so now it's his turn. His partners, apparently, were not against it, and very seriously and at the same time told him to stand up for them. Herod even flinched from such pressure, from his teammates, and seemed to lose his confidence for a moment. But after that, he gathered himself again, as the goblins had already attacked them in a crowd. The ordinary and weak goblins they had already dealt with were taken over by Yang and the girl. Yan looked at her and said, "Go ahead." Cecilia grinned and said yes. And after that, she used her charms called Strengthening the Body. In one instant, Yang's body was strengthened. Yang grinned and said that they should come to him. He himself also did not stand still and rushed to the attack while swinging his hammer. But the guy was so engrossed in the battle with weak goblins that he did not even notice how the goblin appeared behind him and was already ready to attack him. But Herod noticed it in time and thought that Jan was in danger now. But if he interferes with it, then they will lose their points. He was already ready to use his magic to help. But then Cecilia intervened, who used her magic called Air Dagger Shot and simply blew this hobgoblin aside, so now Jan did not need help. Harry was both very surprised and pleased. He looked at his friend with admiration and thought that he could definitely not rely on her. Use it as a projectile. She used magic on this dagger sword in order to increase its strength and speed. She's really quick on the uptake. And after that, the girl made it clear to Ian so that he could act further and finish off that hobgoblin. Ian immediately gathered his strength and thanked the girl for her help, and he attacked this huge goblin with his hammer. However, this was not enough for him, so the guy swung his weapon again and used his mighty blow, which slammed this hobgoblin into the wall. The whole team was incredibly happy, as they had completely dealt with this group of monsters and could continue on their way. Herod breathed a sigh of relief as no one was injured. He looked at his happy friends and thought it was just a great job. It seems that she is not only able to tease him. Then Jan said that, however, he was still a little exhausted. Cecilia agreed with him and said that she too. Herod was very happy about it, as he saw it as a chance to show his magic and do something, so he immediately said that he could treat them then. But he was never allowed to finish, and immediately interrupted. They said that he could treat them then. But he was never allowed to finish, and immediately interrupted. They said that their points would also be deducted for this. Herod was just terrified because he at least wanted to use his magic in some way, but every time he failed to do so. While Herod himself was still in prostration, the rest of the team went to the map in order to once again see what awaits them. Cecilia immediately assessed their entire situation and said that there was an enemy double circle nearby. Jan said that then they should deal with him too. In a short time, Herod had already regained consciousness and also approached them in order to assess the situation. The girl said that she was almost sure that he must be here somewhere already. Herod agreed with her and said yes, everything is right. At that moment, Jan noticed something ahead and asked what kind of shadow was there. Cecilia immediately perked up and said they should take a look. However, what the girl saw there threw her into a strong shock. The girl started shaking all over in horror and asked if it was really the boss of the dungeon. It was a poor lizard. This 3-meter monster that hides in the abyss has great agility and strength. Ian was also very surprised when he saw such a powerful monster here and said that it was marked on the map in the same way as Hobgoblin. Or what? I told Cecily that this is a monster that appears once every 50 years. Now their confidence had left them, and they couldn't even move. The girl was terrified and said they couldn't beat something like that. Even Yang was terrified, and he asked what the hell was going on here. He doesn't understand anything. Herod also tensed up because his friends were so stunned by this and thought they were scared. However, he also began to blame himself for this and thought that it looked like he had messed up somewhere again. Meanwhile, in a separate room on the 10th floor of this dungeon, the professor was wandering around here right now to make sure everything was going right. She walked through all the surroundings and sighed and said that it was possible not to even come down here, because as she thought there were no signs of students on this floor. She can already return to the 9th floor. The woman already wanted to go to the 9th floor, but still something caught her attention, so she stopped and went that way. There she saw something interesting lying on the floor and immediately picked it up. The woman appreciated it and said that it was scales. This just can't be happening. She needs to study this. At the same time, her 3 students gathered to fight this huge lizard, which was clearly already hostile to them. It just so happened that Herod was now standing behind his friends and was horrified that they were terrified. He looked at his friends and thought they were scared. Had he messed up somewhere again? But still, he didn't understand the seriousness. So he asked them, what did he ask them? Was it really some kind of scary monster? Yang, who was still shaking with horror, said that this was even a very weak word. Cecilia, I couldn't even formulate my thoughts properly, but I still said that it was the lizard of the abyss. And because of its overwhelming power, this monster was nicknamed the Disaster, which appears once every 50 years. Now Herod himself was tense and asked if this monster was really that strong. He himself began to think about how to get out of this whole situation, and thought that why couldn't he distinguish between such monsters? He started blaming himself for everything again and wondered if he had overdone the settings for the circle. It all depends on what level of strength to use for the average value. The double circle marked the goblin's hob with the same level of strength because it set the value too low for the average. Ian was so scared they even said that their assessment was the least of his worries right now. Is there anything they can do in such a situation? Cecilia said they were too inconsiderate, so now the only hope is for Herod. Herod himself would have been very happy to intervene in all this and thought that, of course, this is really the danger. However, Pharisee, he recalled again the words of his fencing instructor, Lux, who had told them before entering the dungeon that, however, there would be an exception if there was danger to them. That rule can be broken so that none of them gets hurt. Herod thought that he had agreed to be responsible for searching for enemies, but he did not understand why they should have their points deducted because of him. Maybe there is at least some way? He remembered the words of another of his teachers, who told him that, however, there was still one option. They will limit him and he can only come up with a strategy, as well as give instructions and look for an opponent. Herod thought that, however, what could he do with such restrictions? And at that moment, the monster attacked them, as it was not going to wait any longer. He aimed straight at Herod, who thought he had no choice but to use his power. He was already ready to attack this monster, but at the last moment he changed his mind and thought that he could still do something, maybe if he uses this magic. After that, he turned to this lizard and asked him if he could hear him. Herod used his other magic, with which he was able to communicate with this lizard. However, it wasn't just telepathy. Herod also created the image of the dragon himself, who scared this lizard to death. And the lizard didn't think about the attack anymore, because he was scared and pressed himself to the ground. The lizard, without ceasing, began to bow to Herod. Ian and Cecilia simply froze in place with their mouths open in amazement, not understanding the whole situation. They wondered what had just happened. Herod, in turn, did not pay attention to anyone, and thought that they would not be able to have a highly intellectual conversation, of course, but at least he understands what he is saying to him. He would not have thought that he would need this skill in such a place. After that, he went back into his memories and remembered training with his mother. Herod then asked her what dragon intimidation was, right? His mother told him that it was true. This kind of magic allows you to communicate with monsters. If you speak dragon language using magic power, then you can make dragon-type monsters understand the difference in rank. Herod was surprised, but still said that he still prefers to win quickly while using the dragon flash. His mother sighed and said that then he would never be able to become the strongest. The boy asked, "Why is that?" Mom said that because strength is when you can win without a fight. Herod was very impressed by her words at the time and said how cool it sounded. And now in this situation, he was very grateful to her for this, and thought that he was very grateful to her for teaching him this. After that, he turned back to this monster and told him to listen to him very carefully. He must never touch anyone who appears on this floor. If he suddenly sees a man here, he must immediately let him pass, and this is an order. The lizard crouched completely to the floor, unable even to lift its head, and said that it would do as he ordered it. Herod was very pleased with the work he had done and thought that suddenly someone besides them would wander here to the 10th floor, and this order would protect such people from danger. After that, he turned to this lizard again and said that it was good. Then he could raise his head. Only after that, the lizard was able to get off the ground and look at them. He saw the terrified children, who were already in spite of all the danger of pouncing on him. But because of the order, the lizard couldn't do it and immediately ran away. Herod breathed a sigh of relief and said that he muttered something to himself, but just ran away. So it can be said that their meeting with him ended in failure. Well, now they have to move on. However, his partners immediately stopped him and asked him what the hell he had just done. Yang said they couldn't just ignore what had happened. Herod asked them to calm down. Yan, along with Cecilia, told him that he should provide them with a more convincing explanation for all this. Herod tensed up again and thought they were scaring him. At the same time, their teacher continued to wander, so the floors asked if maybe she just imagined it after all. The appearance of the abyss lizard is here. However, she couldn't just let the whole situation go and said no. But if suddenly it really happened, it will also affect the safety of her students. She recalled a very recent situation in their class when a griffin flew up to them and said that a repeat of that situation with the griffin, as a teacher, she must avoid this at all costs. And just at that moment, that lizard of the abyss arrived to her, who was running away from her students as fast as he could. The woman tensed up and said that here he was. At the same time, Harry was being tortured by his own partners. They were all trying to beat a normal excuse out of him for what he had done. From the side of this situation, it really looked very frightening. Harry told them that he was just muttering to himself. Cecilia couldn't count it as an excuse and said that he definitely wouldn't have run away from it like that. Jan said he was acting really weird. This abyss lizard bowed its head to the ground and trembled all over, and then tucked its tail between its legs and just ran away from them. However, while they were talking about it, they heard some strange noises behind them, and all three immediately turned around. There, they saw the same abyss lizard, which was rushing back towards them as fast as it could, as if it was running from something very scary. Jan, Cecilia, and Herod himself were scared and thought that he had returned. Herod thought, why did he come back? However, this lizard stopped right at their feet and pressed down to the ground again. And then these three students saw their teacher. Hadar was very surprised and asked what the teacher was really like. The woman did not seem at all surprised by such a strange behavior of the lizard of the abyss, and immediately asked the boy that this was his job, right? Hadar tried to justify himself again, but it turned out very badly for him again. They didn't even let him finish. Ian, along with Cecilia, immediately surrounded this lizard and carefully watched it so that it would not run away. At the same time, the teacher was trying to get to the truth, so she communicated with Harad, who obediently sat on his knees in front of her, as if he had already been punished for something. The woman said that as soon as she saw him, he immediately turned to flight, so he intimidated him with his dragon magic, didn't he? Hadar said yes, and immediately asked if she really believed him. The woman seemed to say reproachfully that, of course, she believed him. She spread her hands to the side and said that even though he was strong, he was still the same problem child. Hadar asked what for what. And one more thing. He looked at his group and asked what would happen to their grades. The woman smiled and said he didn't have to worry about it. The appearance of the abyss lizard here is an emergency that none of them could have foreseen. And no matter how, he protected the two of them, even though it was such a way. Hadar asked her if it was praise or not, but in any case, he is very glad that this will not affect their grades in any way. The woman sighed heavily again and said that. And now they need to do something about it. Hadar was a little surprised and asked if she still doubted her safety. By his order, he was completely disabled. The woman said it wasn't that she doubted him at all, but as a teacher, he can't let this abyss lizard just walk around here like that. At the same moment, Ian, along with Cecilia, whose voice was strained again, turned to their teacher and said that something was happening to the lizard of the abyss. The women tensed together with Hadar. Apparently, that lizard still decided to resist Hadar's order and said that the damn people. He's definitely not going to die here. No matter what, he will definitely survive. And despite the order that was given to him, he still disobeyed him, and immediately after that, out of nowhere, a goblin jumped out, which immediately attacked them. Cecilia and Ian simply couldn't dodge such a sudden attack, so their teacher and Hadar came to their aid and saved them from being hit. They moved to a safe enough distance from these monsters in order to take a little break. The woman turned to her students and asked if they were all right. 3 students answered her at the same time, that yes, and at the same moment, Hadar noticed the injury of their teacher. He looked at her back, which had a deep enough cut, and told her that her back... The woman said that she was fine, because it was just a scratch, but they have to be ready for anything. Soon, the 4 of them were surrounded by a whole army of different monsters, which apparently were called by the very lizard of the abyss. They all turned their backs to each other in order to be in time to repel the attack of the monsters. The situation was very tense. Jan quickly looked around and asked, "How many enemies are there at all?" Cecilia said with horror that this lizard did not run away. He just pretended to run away, and he gathered a whole crowd of enemies. The lizard began to mock them. He laughed out loud and said that if they threatened the boss of this floor, then all these monsters would come to his aid. He looked at Har, who was trying to intimidate him, and said that he had been able to intimidate him, but with these guys, everything would be different. However, he promises that he will leave and not step on their corpses. After that, he already turned to his subordinates and said that they should kill them. And as soon as these monsters heard the order from him, they immediately attacked. Hadar was already fully ready for battle. But without permission, I couldn't start the teacher, and asked her that this was a special case, right? The woman said that, of course, so he could use his power. Hadar was waiting for this permission from her, so he said yes, and immediately after that, he used his magic. After applying this magic, the monsters slowed down in surprise. Hadar said that fast magic is also suitable for low-ranked monsters. The boy used his magic called the Call of Heaven, and immediately after applying this magic, the monsters stopped for a moment. The monsters stopped their advance and looked like they were under something. The monsters looked incredibly happy. Cecilia looked at each of these monsters in surprise and said they looked pretty happy. And their facial expressions, of course. Favake Inshek, Jan was very surprised and asked if it was really healing magic. The woman asked what kind of place was the treatment. This magic transforms an object into particles of light and simply destroys it. This is a high-level instant death magic. Transforms an object into particles of light and simply destroys it. This is a high-level instant death magic. At the same time, the subject enjoys excessive pleasure from this process, and that is why they looked so happy. The woman clutched her head and sighed, saying that she would not have thought that he would be able to use her on such a large scale. He amazes her, as always. The lizard of the abyss himself was in incredible shock from everything that was happening because he was already sure that this would be the end of it. He looked with horror at all his subordinates who were exposed to this magic and said that it was simply impossible. Did he just destroy more than half of the monsters in just one attack? His monsters didn't even react to him in any way, and everyone continued to be in prostration. Jan grinned and thanked his friend for that. Now, he already felt more confident. I took up my hammer again, preparing to attack again. Cecilia felt more confident and told him that he shouldn't worry about the other monsters because they would take care of them themselves. But Hadar hastened to stop them and said that there was no need for this. He looked at the other monsters that his magic had not reached and said that they had seen what had just happened, so they would probably just run away. The woman sighed heavily and said that sometimes he also has muscles instead of brains. Hadar paid no attention to her words, but turned to the lizard himself and told him that he was pathetic after all. The lizard was still in severe shock and could not believe that everything that was happening was real. Hadar told him that of course he had gathered a huge number of monsters here. However, there was no point in that. The boy turned to his teacher again and told her that this time he realized something very important for himself. Even if he really wants to negotiate with someone, there are still people with whom he will not work in any way. The lizard of the abyss, despite the whole situation, which was clearly not in his favor, was still not going to give up and said that now it was time for a strategic retreat. A child will never keep up with his speed. But still, apparently, the lizard perfectly understood the whole situation and no longer dared to contact this boy. Well, this time Hadar couldn't just let this monster go. He used his magic again and said that he would not let him escape this time. After that, he used his magic called high-speed dragon flash. Despite the fact that the lizard tried to get out of here as soon as possible, it still did not work out, because Hadar's magic mercilessly overtook him and eliminated him. The lizard flew off to the side and obviously won't cause any more trouble to anyone. The boy was very pleased with the work he had done. At that moment, he heard someone call out to him, so that he turned around. And at that moment, his friends hugged him and said that they had coped with it. Cecilia said he saved them. Jan said that he could really be relied upon. Hadar said he was very glad that everything was okay. Well, after that, Hadar and his friends safely left this dungeon. Hadar got the highest score for completing this dungeon, and one training session in the dungeon has already come to an end. In the evening of the same day, Jasmine was having dinner with her father at their estate right now. The girl shared everything that had happened with him. President Wright was surprised again and asked if there was such a thing in the dungeon too. Hadar is the same as always. Jasmine completely agreed with her father on this and said that it was true. The girl herself sighed heavily and said that it was the same with him all the time, but this time all the monsters in the dungeon just ran away. Of course, they succeeded in such a practical lesson. President Wright supported his daughter and asked, however, "Wasn't it fun?" Jasmina smiled and said yes. President Wright thought about it and said that he was still a very skilled fighter. And, apparently, some brilliant idea came to him, so the man immediately jumped up and said yes. He came up with something very interesting. Jasmine was startled and stopped eating. President Wright said he might be able to do something about it. Due to the invasion of monsters, it is impossible to ensure security, so they are already on the verge of failure, and he can help the whole country. The next day, before classes, Hadar was approached by his teacher, who told him something. Hadar looked at her questioningly and asked if he had a visitor. The woman said yes, and I asked him that he had recently passed the exam for the National Healer's License, right? Hadar said it was just a forced measure. If he is not a healer, then he will not be given a fair reward. The woman said that's why he got it. However, after receiving the results, one person became interested in him, and she thinks he will do a great job anyway. But there is a high-ranking person there, and that is why he must be very polite. Hadar nodded and said yes. And he asked, by the way, what kind of person is this anyway? The woman said that she was a saint from the kingdom of Zelgius. This is Mrs. Elizabeth Romayashin. Hadar did not immediately realize what he had just been told, however, when it happened. He was very scared and asked if it was really a saint. He immediately asked his teacher that she would also go with him, right? The woman was a little surprised when she saw such a reaction from him and said no, although she, of course, planned to. But they told her that they wanted to talk to him alone. But he already had an internship, so she's sure he can handle it too, so everything will be fine. Hadar was completely horrified and said that this was not the case at all. Why was she being so cruel to him lately? The woman crossed her arms over her chest and said it wasn't true. Hadar disagreed with her on this and said no, it was completely true. Let her think about everything that happened. The woman really thought about it. Then she asked him that, on the contrary, didn't all this prove her trust in him? Hadar even blushed a little at her words and thought that, did she really believe in him? The woman said she would be waiting for him here, so let him go already. And she also heard that he got the highest score in the exam. The boy told her that the shock of all this would no longer allow him to experience the same feeling of victory, and immediately after that, he went to the guest room. He was still standing at the door and did not dare to go inside. He thought she wanted to talk to him alone, didn't she? Were they mad at him for something? He did something at the internship without realizing it, didn't he? After which, he still gathered his strength and knocked on the door. On the other side of the door, they told him to come through. Hadar was incredibly worried about this meeting and thought that he really wanted to go home. After that, he opened the door and said that he was sorry. He saw a girl in the room with her back to him, and as soon as he entered the room, the girl immediately turned to face him, and Hadar was confused. He even froze for a moment and thought how beautiful she was. She really is a real saint. This girl asked that he was a Hadar, didn't she? She had heard that he had passed a very difficult exam to obtain a national healer's license with a perfect score. Hadar stuttered and said that it was so. The girl smiled at him and said that she was very glad to meet him. She's a saint in this country, and her name is Elizabeth. She shook his hand and said she was looking forward to meeting him. Hadar was still extremely worried and said that he was very pleased. Elizabeth told him that when she visited the church here during her pilgrimage, she heard his story, and when his girlfriend needed help, he applied a very powerful healing. Hadar was still insanely embarrassed and said that back then he acted selflessly without any hesitation. He was just determined to do the best he could at the time. Elizabeth smiled at him and told him not to belittle himself like that. He couldn't fool her anyway. Hadar looked at the girl questioningly. Elizabeth took his hand and told him that she really wanted to meet him. Hadar looked at their hands and thought that she had taken his hand again. Elizabeth asked if he could share with her how to activate absolute treatment quickly. Hadar was shocked and asked her if she really meant that he should teach holy healing magic. Elizabeth nodded at him and said that was true. Hadar still couldn't stand it and told her that he was a little embarrassed because she was holding his hand. The boy himself thought that he was already all red. Elizabeth also blushed because of this and immediately let him go. She apologized to him and said that, of course, she couldn't use such a powerful spell. No matter how hard she tries, does it always take her about an hour? And besides, the probability that everything will work out is less than 1 in 3. And when she did succeed, she then spent the whole day recovering. Hadar said it was really difficult. Elizabeth knelt in front of him and pressed her forehead to the floor, saying that was why she was asking. No, she was begging him. Hadar felt incredibly awkward because of this and thought that first the hands and now this, or what? He couldn't refuse her and said that it was fine, but he really asked her to raise her head. Elizabeth asked if it was really true. Thank him very much. Hadar thought that was what she meant by talking in private. After that, the boy decided to get right to the point and said that he would show it to her right now, so let her watch very carefully. Elizabeth was incredibly happy and said that, of course, and she thanked him again. She looked at the floor, where there was already a circle, and said that it was a magic circle. The boy himself applied his highest magic of treatment, which is called absolute treatment. While he was conjuring, he glanced at Elizabeth briefly and saw the complete admiration on her face. The girl said that this is an absolute treatment. She would never have thought that it could activate in 1 instant. All this time, she was proud to be the best healer in this country. But it seems that she was very much mistaken about this. She still has a lot to learn. Hadar said she was exaggerating. Elizabeth said that even after this magic, she felt so pleased for some reason. Hadar asked if maybe she would try it now too. Elizabeth came to her senses and began to behave as usual again. The girl apologized to him for her slightly strange behavior and said that she was so excited and couldn't contain her emotions. Herod looked at her with some admiration and thought how sincere and sweet she was. Elizabeth gathered her strength and said that she was starting. After that, she tried to apply the same healing magic that Herod himself had just applied. The boy looked at the magic circles that appeared and said that he understood. There's really something missing here. He understood what her problem was, so don't let her worry. Elizabeth was very surprised and asked what was really so fast. The girl was still completely in awe of his incredible abilities. Herod, as if ignoring her words of admiration, immediately got down to business and said that they should start by explaining the magic circle. Elizabeth smiled and, having already prepared to absorb all the information, said that she was listening to him very carefully. Herod used his magic power to demonstrate a magic circle to her, so that several such circles appeared in front of Elizabeth at once. Herod said that first of all, it consists of 2 main elements. The control of the magic she wants to use is called magic control, and the introduction of magical power in order to activate magic, and this is called magical activation. As for her, she doesn't have any problems with magic control. She does everything fast enough. However, as soon as it comes to magical activation, its speed drops dramatically. Elizabeth listened to him attentively, without interrupting him once, and said that this was it. After which, after thinking about it a little more, she said that is, it means if she can speed up her magic activation, then she can use such a strong spell, right? Herod was glad that she understood what he was trying to convey and, smiling, said that in theory this was exactly the case. But in order to increase the speed of magical activation, you need to increase the total amount of magical power, as well as the output magical power. There is simply no other way. Elizabeth thought about it and said that, in other words, she would not succeed. It upset her a lot. The girl said that, so let him forgive her for turning to him for such stupid advice. Herod felt very embarrassed that he had made her think that way about herself, and told her what she was doing. Why would she do that? She shouldn't apologize. If she works hard, then a total supply of magic. But apparently Elizabeth had already decided everything for herself, so she interrupted him and said that no, she understood him. She realized that she would not be able to achieve this in one day, and she also realized that how much effort he had put into achieving this, and the way he uses absolute treatment quickly. This is an excellent indicator. She thinks it was obvious to him anyway. He's such an amazing person, so she thinks he's just a real genius. The girl felt very insecure and upset. She put her head down again and said that he should forgive her for her rude request. Herod was shocked and did not know how to help her. But despite everything, he still really wanted to do it. He looked at the girl and thought that she had come such a long way to meet him. Is it right to say goodbye without solving the problem? Can't he do anything about it? Right at that moment, his teacher burst into the room and said she was sorry for interrupting their conversation. Hadar and Elizabeth immediately looked towards the door. The boy was very surprised and asked what the teacher really was. The woman was clearly running towards them, so at first she had to catch her breath, and only after that she said that everything did not go according to plan in the lesson on dispelling the curse. 2 students had become victims of a very powerful curse, so they have no time to waste. So soon, they all arrived at the room where they put these children. The woman turned to Mrs. Elizabeth and asked her to help them. She also turned to her student and said that he should help them too. Elizabeth has already assessed the condition of these students and said that she understands why they decided to invite her and Mr. Hadar. It's a curse called respiratory distress. And apparently, because of a mistake, they inhaled a curse. It has affected their lungs and prevents them from functioning. The woman asked if they could be cured. Elizabeth said it was only an absolute cure. After that, she turned to the boy and asked him if he could take on one, and she would take on the other. They cannot delay, because every minute is very important to them. She can't stand idly by. Hadar obviously wanted to tell her something, so that the girl asked him what was it. Hadar looked at her in surprise and said that in order to cure this curse, absolute treatment is not necessary here at all. Elizabeth was very surprised and asked him if he really thought that more powerful magic would be needed than this. Hadar said no. This is the highest level of healing magic. Still, he would check with her. What kind of disease does she want to cure? Elizabeth thought about it and said that, for example, there are more than 100 cases. Should I tell her about all of them? For example, there is a violation of immunity due to magic. Hadar interrupted her and said that it was not necessary. At least not now. He himself thought that. However, he had forgotten something important. After that, he went back to his memories. One day, his mother told him that today they would be talking about consulting services. What does he think is required of a consultant first of all? Hadar asked what the accuracy of the advice was, or the problem-solving skills. His mom said it was just an instant response, as expected from her child. Then, what will he do if the client underestimates himself? It is very difficult to evaluate yourself objectively. What caused the problem? Sometimes they miss the most important thing simply because they worry too much. And that is why, when he gives advice to someone, he must remember the most important thing. Hadar remembered this right now and said that it was necessary to find the real problem behind the anxiety in order to open a person's eyes. He thought that the rapid activation of absolute healing was not the main reason. Most likely, the main problem is that she wants to help as many people as possible. Something like that. Elizabeth said that without using absolute treatment. So he's saying that there's another magic that can help them, right? Hadar said yes. A perfect healing will be enough to remove this curse. His teacher said that. However, perfect healing does not have such a strong effect. Hadar said that yes, and that's why he will do one trick. Ideal healing affects the whole body, but it is possible to concentrate the effect on one affected area. And if you do that, then perfect healing is enough. Elizabeth said she understood everything. It's just amazing. Hadar interrupted her and said that there was something else. Elizabeth looked at him questioningly. Herod said that this could cure most diseases and curses. Elizabeth said that's how it is. The girl herself thought that this meant that with just perfect healing, she would be able to help a lot of patients. Herod had already activated his magic circle and said that now he should be allowed to explain how to do it all. Elizabeth, of course, was not against it and said that yes, she asked him very much. Herod said it was part of a magic circle, and here the scope of magic is shown. In other words, if you change it, you can adjust the effect area. She can use the perfect healing without any difficulty, right? Elizabeth said that he was directly offending her. She is the saint of this country, Elizabeth Romation. However, the girl looked away and said that, however, she was not sure, since she had not tried it. Herod smiled, and then said that they were starting. He applied his local magic, and Elizabeth applied her perfect healing. In a short time, these two students have already come to their senses. The guy got up and said that his body. The girl immediately remembered what had happened, and said that was for sure, because they were under a curse. Elizabeth hugged Herod and said that they had succeeded. Herod was very embarrassed and told her that she was too close. Elizabeth herself was embarrassed after his words and said that she was just so overjoyed. The teacher looked at them and thanked them both for their help. After that, these two students had already left the infirmaries and were ready to start their studies. The girl thanked the saint for her help. The guy turned to Herod and said that thanks to him too. When these students left the hospital, Herod told the saint that he was very glad that she was able to save them. Elizabeth said no, because he was the one who helped a lot, and that's why he needs to be thanked somehow. After all, he also passed for a healer's license. Herod looked at her questioningly. Elizabeth said that first of all she would like to pay for his internship. They will pay him a total of 1.2 billion. Herod was very surprised and asked what he really had so much. Elizabeth also said that they would also give him the position of head of the healers. Later, she will prepare everything for this. Herod said he couldn't accept it all. His teacher said she didn't think there was any harm in it. He is already recognized all over the world. He will be treated just like a baron. Herod said he didn't care at all. He doesn't need so much. After a while, the carriage had already arrived for Elizabeth. Elizabeth turned to them again and said that it was okay because she already had patients waiting for her elsewhere. She'll take a vacation sometime. Herod wondered if the conversation was already over. And then Elizabeth said that this was why she would not give up on studying absolute treatment. Someday she will definitely succeed, and she will show that she will become a saint who can save many people. And that's exactly why. Then Herod couldn't stand it and went up to her. He took her hand and told her that she would definitely succeed. He will always be very happy to come to her aid. Elizabeth thanked him for that, and she called him a master. Herod was embarrassed because of this and said that he was somehow embarrassed when she called him that. Elizabeth said he deserved it. She had already climbed into her carriage and told her goodbye that she would definitely visit him again. Let him take care of himself. Herod waved at her and said he would look forward to it. When the saint left, his teacher turned to him and said that she would never have thought that he would take anyone by the hand. She thought he would just run away and hide in a corner. Hadar wasn't paying attention to her words at all right now, and wondered if she was always acting like this. The teacher said that she was doing it all unconsciously. Probably. At that moment, someone addressed him again. Hadar turned around and saw Jasmine there. Jasmine said it was a good thing he hadn't left yet. Hadar said that yes, he had things to do, but he was completely done. Jasmine said, "That's how it is." And after that, her voice immediately changed and she spoke more rudely. She asked him, "Then who was this beautiful girl he was holding hands with? What is their relationship?" Hadar was terrified. The teacher said that they were just a student and a teacher to some extent. Jasmine immediately calmed down and said, "That's how it was." "Good then. Would he give her a minute?" The girl was very embarrassed and said that she had a very important conversation with him. Hadar looked at the girl questioningly. After that, the two of them poisoned themselves in the royal capital, where they visited a nice cafe. Each of them has already made their own order, and they were sitting opposite each other. Hadar. I kept looking at Jasmine and thought about talking to him. I wonder if something has happened. He's very nervous for some reason. Jasmine spoke first. She apologized to him for inviting him so suddenly, and she asked him if she had interrupted him from his business. Hadar shook his head negatively and said that everything was fine. So what did she want to talk to him about? Jasmine said that, in fact, her father had entrusted him with the case, and it was related to the bamboo company. Hadar was a little surprised and wondered if President Wright was hiring him. He can't agree to that. Jasmine put her cup on the table and invited him to get right to the point. She asked him if he knew about the Ashugan Peninsula. Hadar asked a little thoughtfully, "What is the Ashugan Peninsula, Wright?" Jasmine smiled and asked that wasn't it abandoned? After that, she reached into her briefcase. From there, she took out a card, which she put right on the table in front of him and told him to look at it. In the kingdom of Zelsius, the Ashugan Peninsula is the westernmost, and in the kingdom, it is the closest place to the Inferno continent. And she would like to consult with him about the project of building a fortress on this very peninsula. We're talking about the complete transfer of security management work. Hadar became very nervous about this, so much so that his hands began to shake. He said it seemed like a huge responsibility. Jasmine smiled at him and told him not to worry so much. Alar thought about it for a while and asked why build a fortress in such a place. Is there really a war going on with this continent? Jasmine looked at him questioningly and asked that there was no country on the Inferno continent, right? Hadar looked at her questioningly and asked, then why would they need a fortress? Jasmine said that this peninsula is often attacked by monsters, powerful monsters from the Inferno continent. After that, she looked at him in surprise and said that it turns out that there are things that even Hadar does not know about. Hadar smiled and said that he was not very good at geography. He himself thought that most of his mother's books were ancient. Jasmine was obviously very pleased with this and said that okay, then they would continue on. Naturally, Hadar noticed this and told her not to be so hard on him. After that, Jasmine plunged into explanations. She said that the Inferno continent is the most dangerous in the whole world, and this is due to the fact that disaster-level monsters are found there in large numbers every year. In short, he defeated the Abyss Lizard, the Griffin, or even something more powerful. Hadar looked at the map again, which was still lying on the table, and said that the distance was true. Jasmine said that it would not be difficult for a flying monster to cover this distance, and at the moment, this is the biggest problem. However, the worst outcome would be if they could settle on it and start reproducing. Hadar said that if this happened, the whole kingdom would be in great danger, and that's why they want to build a fortress, right? Jasmine was delighted and said that this was the right answer. Hadar said that he would not want Zelsius's kingdom to become home to such dangerous monsters. Jasmine completely agreed with him and said that she thought the same way. This is an important issue on which the survival of an entire nation depends, and that is why funds from the country's defense budget will be allocated for the implementation of this project. And that is why Bamboo is not the leading company in this industry ahead of the whole planet. But there is still one more problem. They cannot ensure the safety of employees at the construction site, and therefore, after so many months, they still cannot start construction. Hadar said that powerful monsters often appear and there's nothing you can do about it. But can't they hire experienced adventurers or knights? Jasmine said that of course they can do it. The government allocates them enough budget for all this, but there are not so many of them. They just don't have enough people to fight the monsters from this continent. Hadar said that they live in a difficult world. After that, he abruptly fell silent, as an idea occurred to him that did not please him much. He said he wanted to clarify something just in case. The fact that she's telling him about it now. About the fact that they haven't been able to start construction for several months. So she wants to leave it all to him. Or what? Jasmine also smiled at him and said that she had said exactly that from the very beginning. Hadar said she didn't say that. The complete transfer of security management work. Is that what she's talking about? Jasmine was a little surprised and asked, "Is it impossible? He can afford it." Hadar said she was too optimistic. Jasmine said that, of course, she does not make such an offer to an ordinary adventurer. But he saved her then from that terrifying monster griffin, and that's why she can confidently recommend him. Hadar said that it's one thing when you need to protect one person, and it's quite another thing when you need to protect one person, and it's quite another thing when there are many of them. Jasmine jumped up from her seat and said that he annoyed her. Well, now he's not satisfied again? Hadar froze and thought she was angry. But even in spite of all this, she is still elegant. He told her that the offer to her was really tempting, however. What if he can't handle the monsters? There was silence after that. And soon after, Jasmine laughed. She apologized to him and said she didn't think he would worry so much about it. He really underestimates himself. Dad told her the same thing. Hadar thought that he appreciated, of course, that Jasmine said that if he fails, there will be a fine. If he decides he can't handle it, then everything will be fine. If they need more people, they will take action. In that case, if he's happy with everything, then why doesn't he just agree to it? Hadar stared at her in silence and thought that if he agreed, he would get to know Jasmine much better. And after that, he plunged back into his memories. He remembered one of the days he spent with his mother. He went up to his mother, whom he greeted. Mom stared at him in surprise and asked, "What is it?" Hadar sat down next to her and said that when he entered the academy, if he needed advice, he wouldn't be able to consult her, would he? Mom agreed with him and said that it was true, because they would be too far apart. But if she could give him advice, life is a series of decisions. He's real. It's the result of decisions he's made in the past. The kind of person he wants to become depends on what decision he makes now. But whether this decision will bring him closer to an ideal future is up to him alone. She patted his head and said that one day she picked him up. And that's why she's very happy now. And besides, he can do anything, because he's her son. Hadar smiled at her and said yes. After that, Hadar said that it was fine. He agrees, so let her give it to Mr. Right. Jasmine was very happy and said that she would like it right away. Hadar said that, however, if she wanted to talk about the case, then why did she blush so much? Because of his words, the girl blushed again and said that maybe because of the sunset, the light fell in such a way that her face looked red. Hadar did not ask her any more such questions and thought that this was how it was. The girl herself thought that because boys had always asked her out before, however, she'd never invited the boy herself. And when she realized it, she just felt embarrassed about it. After that, she got up from the table and said that it was okay. Departure in 2 days on the weekend. It's going to be a long trip, so he has to prepare well for it, and she's going to go now. Hadar immediately jumped up after her and asked if it was really a long trip. Then, it turns out that he will miss classes, right? Jasmine is very confident. She said that he should leave it to her, because she will talk about it with her father. Hadar asked if everything would be all right. After that, 2 days have already passed. Now the two of them were already sitting in the carriage and heading to the place they needed. Hadar said he would never have thought of going on such an important expedition. Jasmine said that her father had talked to the director so he shouldn't worry so much. In any case, most of the Zelji's academy was built by her father's company. Hadar thought that was to be expected from the best construction company in the kingdom. He asked her again if everything was going to be all right. They will be with her, just the two of them, for a few days. Jasmine was embarrassed by his words again and said that everything was fine. That is... Meh. She looked at him again and said that, rather, she was very happy. Hadar sighed and said she was happy to be able to take a break from the academy, right? She gets tired too. Jasmine was upset and thought that he still didn't understand anything. Hadar said that, however, he was also very glad that she was here, so he was counting on her. Jasmine told him that he should consider her to be his guide. She herself thought that was right because it was too early to give up. During that time, she would be alone with Herod, and she would do everything possible to make him pay attention to her. But what is this noise? Still, she couldn't stand it and asked him what he was doing. Hadar shuddered and thought it was close. He apologized to her and said that he just uses perfect healing periodically because he gets very seasick. Jasmine was surprised and told him not to apologize for it. He doesn't have to use his healing because he can just say so. Still, he couldn't help himself and almost threw up in the carriage, so they all stopped right there. Jasmine came up to him and asked him how he was. Hadar said his perfect healing helped. Jasmine said that this was it, as she called him the almighty know-it-all. However, the whole situation amused her very much, and she said that he was really seasick. And this is amazing because he is omnipotent and all-knowing. Hadar stared at her and asked what the almighty and all-knowing meant in general. But he can't do anything about it because he's not used to it. He is more used to moving through the sky. Jasmine asked him about the airship, right? Hadar said no. His mom can fly. Jasmine was very surprised and remembered the time when he saved her. She thought that if she thought about it that way, she had seen him fly. She had completely forgotten about it. Hadar was scared by her strange reaction, so he asked her if she was okay. Was she getting seasick too? Jasmine thought that, after all, why could he fly at all? Hadar, meanwhile, said that he is now using his perfect healing. Jasmine got up and said that, by the way, it's much faster to move through the air. Hadar said he thinks it's faster than overland. Jasmine said that then, of course, if he didn't mind, then she would like to fly with him again. While she was telling him this, she was very confused. She was horrified and thought how awkward she looked during this. So I immediately told him that just don't let him think something very strange. It's just that he won't have to use perfect healing all the time, and it'll be faster that way, right? Hadar thought about it too and said it made sense. He looked at the carriage and said that, however, she had tried so hard and even prepared the carriage. Is it okay if they don't ride it? It's also a cost. Jasmine said it didn't matter how they reached their destination, so everything would be fine. She looked at their coachman and asked what was right. The man immediately said yes. Hadar still felt awkward about it and thought that he was very sorry. He himself said that no matter how you look at it, Paulette will obviously be faster. He thought that even if he flew with Jasmine and said that then they would start. Jasmine thought that she would never even have thought that she would fly through the air with Hadar. It's so romantic. What's the unexpected turn of events? So now she needs to keep her face in the dirt. And while the girl was thinking about all this, you didn't even notice how a huge dragon appeared next to her. This dragon, who spoke with the voice of Hadar, said that it was fine. His transformation into a dragon is completely. Jasmine was completely shocked and said that there were too many unexpected events. Hadar, who was in the form of a dragon, put it in his paw next to her. Jasmine looked at him questioningly. Hadar told her to hold his paw. Jasmine asked what she was doing, what was climbing on her, or what. After that, the girl began to climb. Her body was shaking all over. She told him not to shake her. Hadar, who was standing perfectly still, said he wasn't shaking her either. In a short time, the girl still managed to climb to the very top, She wondered what kind of situation this was. Hadar told her to hold onto something like his thorn. This would be the safest way. Jasmine was very worried, so in a shaky voice, she said yes. When Jasmine got comfortable, he told her that then they would fly. But just as he was about to take off, Jasmine stopped him and told him to wait a minute. Hadar stopped immediately. Jasmine said that she wanted to ask him a lot of things, but now she only cares about one. She's not going to fall when they're flying, is she? Hadar said that's how it is. Jasmine said that he never answered her. Hadar said he couldn't promise her anything, so he would put up a barrier just in case. Jasmine asked if they could fly slower then, and thanks a lot for the barrier. Hadar said that in that case he might not have turned into a dragon. Okay, the main thing is, let her hold on. Well, now they're flying. Jasmine clung to him as hard as she could and said that she thought the acceleration would be much less. Maybe it's better for him not to accelerate so much? After just 1 hour, they had already arrived at their destination. Hadar canceled his transformation and became an ordinary boy again. Now they were somewhere on the Ashugin Peninsula. Hadar said he thinks it's not worth flying too close in dragon form, otherwise they might scare people. Jasmine was feeling unwell right now, because she had been very seasick during the flight. Now she was sitting on the ground and said that's how it was, and then she threw up. Hadar became worried and asked if she was all right. He's using his perfect treatment right now. Jasmine thanked him. Hadar said that, however, he didn't even seem to accelerate much. Was she getting seasick too? Jasmine said that anyone would get seasick at that speed, after which she sighed and thought that she thought it would be romantic, but in the end he turned into a dragon. She couldn't have expected this. She thinks that she has become very greedy and it is only her fault. Because there were only 2 of them, and she wanted him to worry more about her. At that moment, Hadar held out his hand to her and asked if her hand was allowed. Jasmine blushed. Hadar said that suddenly she would stumble over some branch in the forest. He can't let that happen. After his words, Jasmine immediately took his hand and said that that was how it was. And after that, they had already continued on their way, holding hands. Jasmine still couldn't believe that this was happening in reality and thought, what is going on here anyway? Is it definitely Hadar? Hadar asked her that they were going that way, right? Jasmine said yes. Soon, the 2 of them had already arrived at the branch of the bamboo organization. There, at the reception, they were greeted by a girl. She told them that they were welcoming them to the bamboo branch. Hadar looked around and thought how spacious it was here. The girl asked them what she could do to help them. Jasmine said that they would like to see the place where the fortress is being built, so could she show them its surroundings. The girl apologized and said that this place is closed to everyone except the direct participants of this project. What do they have to do with their company? Hadar looked at the girl questioningly, after which he asked Jasmine what shouldn't they have known. Jasmine told him that it was just standard practice. Moreover, they are on a remote continent, so it is not surprising that no one knows him. After that, Jasmine turned to this girl and said that she apologized for not introducing herself right away. She is Jasmine and is the only daughter of the president of the bamboo company. And this is Hadar, and he will handle security. Hadar said he was pleased to meet you. The girl, with the same smile, asked them to leave here. Jasmine was very surprised and asked, what, why? The girl said they were supposed to be here in a week. They shouldn't be here right now. Jasmine agreed with this and said yes. That was the original plan, but it's still true. They were able to get here so quickly by air. She sat on Har's back when he turned into a dragon. Hadar was very embarrassed about this, and he thought that she had told everything, and he had purposely landed far away. The girl still looked at them calmly and told them to leave here. How many times would she have to say that? Jasmine thought. Is it really happening again? Hadar said that he would not have believed it either if someone had told him that he suddenly turned into a dragon and flew. Jasmine said that she was already just used to the fact that he was so amazing. Hadar wondered if it was all because of him. Jasmine approached this girl again and said that it was all true, so please let her believe it. The girl said that even if she says so. Hadar thought that maybe they should have come as usual. He can quickly turn into a dragon and then everything will fall into place. But there is very little space here. And then an idea came to mind, and he said that he could just show the same thing. Jasmine looked at him questioningly. Hadar took out the documents and said that it was a contract with the seal of the president. So soon, accompanied by this girl, they went to the construction site. Jasmine said she wondered why she hadn't thought of it in the first place. The girl said that the main thing was that they were still able to convince her of this and let them forgive her, because she should also think faster. But they are already in place. They are from the peninsula, the place where the fortress is planned to be built. Hadar looked around and said it was very spacious. The girl said that the Ashugan Knights, who will be responsible for security, will arrive soon, so they will need to meet with them. Hadar said he understood, but it looks like it's just a planned construction site. Jasmine said yes. As he sees for himself, the construction has not moved forward. Hadar said he would take a closer look. Jasmine didn't mind and just told him to be careful. And then the girl shouted to him that it was. However, she did not have time to warn him, because out of nowhere, a spiked turtle appeared. This is a giant amphibious monster in the shape of a turtle. Hadar said he had entered someone else's territory without even realizing it. Jasmina was horrified and said that it was bigger than the house. The girl said that besides, this monster has very strong armor. What should they do? They'll just be crushed here. Jasmine tried to calm this girl down and said that everything would be fine, so don't let her worry so much. She herself turned to Herod and asked him that he would help, right? He can beat that turtle, right? The girl told Jasmine that she had too high hopes for him, but they really didn't have much time left, as the monster was advancing. Hadar concentrated and thought that the diagnostic magic was activated. He looked at this monster carefully and thought that the total amount of magic power is not that big. Since he is on this island, he is one of the local species. With a flash of the dragon, he can finish it all in just one hit. He does not know which monsters he will have to deal with in the future, so it is better to fight in an effective way while making the most of their weaknesses. It should be durable, however. There should be no armor on the belly. So, in that case, after that, he applied his atomic transformation. He created the adamantite spear that I used to attack this turtle. Jasmine was absolutely delighted and said that he did not focus on hard places but found a soft belly, as expected of him. The girl, who was still in complete shock, said that ordinary people do not know how to do this. Although it sounds simple in words, Herod said it was something like a local species. The girl asked what kind of nonsense he was saying. Actually, this monster came from the Inferno continent. He's not a local at all. And at that moment, they heard strange sounds that came from the sky. They raised their heads up and said that this time it was a giant phoenix. So there are also 3 of them. The girl said that the knights would be arriving soon, so they should wait for them. Herod ignored her words and used his magic again to scan the monsters. He thought that according to diagnostic magic, 80% of his body was covered in flames. Then, he looked at the water and applied the magic with which he created a spear out of water, and thought that water was his only weakness. He created a trident from the water, with which he attacked these monsters. All 3 monsters died from one hit. The girl was completely terrified of him and asked if it was really one blow and all 3 of them at once. Herod said he was a bit hasty, so let them forgive him for not waiting for the knights. The girl said that if he can handle this on his own, then it's okay that he's not acting according to instructions. The girl said she looked like they didn't need to be looked after. They can go as far away as they want, and she and the young lady will return to the building on business. Hadar said he understood. Jasmina came up to him and said that she wished him luck. Hadar blushed and said he was relying on her, and after that, they went about their business. Hadar stared at that peninsula and said that in the end, none of the monsters appeared anymore. He's bored. If the 2 previous monsters were the strongest, then the monsters on the infernal continent might be much weaker than he thought. And besides, it moved here, most likely because they lost the battle for territory, and therefore there should be stronger monsters on the mainland. Since he can do as he pleases, then he will act. After which, he turned back into a dragon. Jasmine and that girl have already returned back. The girl asks what happens. Hadar can fly, right? Jasmine said yes. She came riding on his back. The girl said it seemed impossible. Jasmine couldn't help but agree with her and said that it was true. Meanwhile, Hadar had already arrived on the island of Inferno. He said he flew by without even hiding, so now he's here. But he doesn't see monsters at all. It's strange because he explored everything here for 30 minutes. Just in case, he will look at the map. He saw a whole bunch of monsters on the map, so he was very surprised and asked how he could have missed them. Had he done something? At the same time, a ghostly Pegasus was hiding not far from him. This Pegasus has high intelligence and abilities that allow her to destroy a medium-sized city. And this Pegasus turned to another and said that a dragon with incredible combat power had arrived. You have to be very stupid not to understand this. Another Pegasus said that it was not surprising. If you fight something like that, then no lives will be enough. After that, one of these Pegasus said that those who do not want to die should follow them. As a result, all the monsters got scared. Hadar looked upset and asked, what should he do now? He has no choice, so he will have to go back. He remembered the words of his mother, who told him to act actively and not give a break. Hadar gathered himself again and said that this was true, because not everyone had escaped yet. He will fly and defeat nearby monsters. Soon he flew to that place and said that he thought they were here somewhere. And there really was one monster, and it was a great sighting. This is a monkey, a demon with extremely good physical abilities but low intelligence. Very aggressive. Hadar used his diagnostic magic and thought he couldn't see any weak spots, which means it's a competition of strength. After that, he used his rapid-fire dragon flash and hit that monster with this attack. However, not a single scratch appeared on this island, and the monster itself rushed straight at him. Hadar sighed heavily and said that he did not kill him with one blow. It's a wonder he didn't run away. If he gets to it, there may be problems, but he won't be able to touch it. After which, he used his fast-fire dragon flash. This attack was able to hit that monster. Chitara came closer to him and said that he would not have thought that he could withstand 50 shots in a row. As expected from the beasts from the Inferno continent, he needs to come up with a more effective way to deal with them. He'll need to think about it better next time. And at that moment, someone turned to him. Hadar immediately turned around and saw a similar dragon behind him. This dragon told him that she was glad to meet him. Hadar was a little surprised and asked, what now? After the giant monkey, is there also a giant dragon? But he doesn't feel any hostility. This dragon apologized to him and said that she was not a suspicious person. She saw his duel, and she would like to ask him something. It would be great if someone would listen to her as a member of her tribe, and she really asks him to make her his student. Hadar was completely shocked and asked what the student was, right? That girl said yes. Hadar asked what she was saying. The girl said that she was actually watching from the shadows, and she was deeply moved. He defeated the great Saitan and didn't even take any damage. She bows down to him. If he doesn't mind, can she call him bro? Hadar was still in shock and thought that she shouldn't come so close to him. He told her that, of course, it was all very pleasant for him, but he would not be able to become her brother. The girl asked, why? After that, Hadar assumed his human form. At first, the girl did not even understand what had happened and thought that he had simply disappeared. She started looking around and asked, where did he go? Hadar said he was from below. The girl was very surprised and asked what kind of person he was. Hadar said yes. He just turned into a dragon for a while. Does she see? She doesn't want to become a human student, right? The girl said that's how it is, but she still wants to be his student. Hadar asked in surprise, why? The girl said that she knew that he could take the form of a dragon. She was captivated by his strength. And besides, Hadar covered his face with his hands and thought it was light. Really? The girl also took human form and said that she could also take human form. She is Francois and very glad to meet him. Hadar thought how cute she was and introduced himself too. He thought that she could take on human form. Well, then he realized something, and he asked that she was a girl. You can't tell by the dragon-shaped voice. Francois was surprised and asked if he really thought she was a boy. In fact, there were almost no other brothers left, and that was why she tried to avoid unnecessary clashes. It's very hard to live here. Hadar thought that was why she wanted to become his student, right? Good. After that, he took on the form of a dragon again. Francois asked if he was really leaving. Hadar told her to turn into a dragon faster. Francois looked at him questioningly and asked if she would go too. The girl was very happy about it, and soon they arrived back at their base. Hadar escorted Francois to her room and told her that it would be her room. The girl looked around the room and said it was a human bed. It's just amazing. Hadar said that his room is next to yours, and if there are any problems, then let her come to him at any time. He won't lock the door. Francois thanked him for that, although she looked very worried. Hadar noticed this and thought that she was clearly uneasy at heart. She has the look he had when he first came out of the mountains. So he asked her that if she didn't mind, they could eat. Francois agreed. So they came to the living room, where a whole table had already been prepared for them. The girl was absolutely delighted and said that people eat such delicious food. Hadar said yes. 3 times a day. And don't let her be in such a hurry. Francois asked if it was really 3 times a day. She's so jealous of them. She doesn't want to go back there anymore. Hadar asked that she was feeling better now, wasn't she? Francois didn't really understand what he was talking about, so she stared at him. The boy told her that she had just looked a little worried before. That's what his mom told him. His mother told him that if he really wanted to talk to someone, they should eat together. Eating together brings us closer. Hadar said the food was delicious and the atmosphere was relaxed. This way they will become closer and it will make the conversation easier. Francois thanked him for his concern and said that, as expected, she was crazy about him, and she called him her brother again. The girl said that since they were talking about it, could she ask him for a favor? If he can, will he teach her? Hadar nodded and said that it was fine. Francois was incredibly happy and asked if it was really true. Hadar said yes. She had originally asked him to do this, or else she had already forgotten. He himself thought that he was not so close. Francois felt a little awkward about this and asked if it was okay that she could do so much. He gave her both food and a roof over her head. The boy said that he had invited her, so everything was fine. But in exchange for all this, he has to ask her for something. Francois smiled and said that, of course, she would do anything. Hadar said he hadn't said anything yet. He wanted to ask for help with his security duties. The girl interrupted him again and said yes. She'll do everything. Hadar smiled and thought that she should listen to him to the end. He told her that, namely, the continent of Inferno. He really wants her to defeat the monsters, and they did not come from her continent to his. The girl said that's what's the matter. Hadar thought that she had finally listened to the end of it. Francois asked if he couldn't handle it himself. Why use it? Hadar said it was true, but the monsters run away as soon as they see him. Francois said that it was. She understands. Because he's too strong for them. Hadar said that he would not want to fight every day either. He wants to take the time to study the behavior of monsters. Francois asked what for. Is he really interested in this? Hadar said that maybe it would be possible to find more monsters like her that she could make friends with. He's not going to kill such monsters. Francois said he was so kind. The girl told him to rely on her. Now that that monkey won't be there, she'll handle everyone. Hadar thanked her and said that it was quite difficult to keep an eye on monsters from both the sky and the water. Francois hugged him and told him that she loved him so much. Hadar said she was too close. And just at that moment, Jasmine came here, who I really liked the whole picture. She asked if she'd interrupted them. Ha! Hadar said that everything is fine, and after that, I looked at her and was very happy when I saw Jasmine there. Jasmine smiled at him and said that it was a good job. However, she still looked very upset and asked what happened. She thought that she had literally walked away for a short time, and the girl had already clung to him. Hadar asked if she was okay. Maybe he should use healing magic? Jasmine told him not to worry and asked who the girl was. He seems to get along with her. Are they really dating? Hadar said, of course not. Jasmine looked at this girl carefully and asked if these horns and tail were real. Hadar whispered to Jasmine that she was a dragon who could transform into a human with magic. Something like that. Jasmine said that's how it is. And she asks him, what is their relationship with this lovely girl? Hadar was surprised and asked if she wasn't surprised that she was a dragon. Jasmine said that he's the same person who turns into a dragon. So what's the difference? Hadar asked what it was. Was it because of him? Francois had already made some conclusions for herself at that time, after which she approached Jasmine and asked if she could be her brother's girlfriend. Jasmine blushed deeply and asked, is that really a girl? Hadar looked at Jasmine in surprise and wondered why she was blushing so much. Francois introduced herself and said from today on she would be a bros student. And may she forgive her for the late introduction. Jasmine asked what the student was. Yes. Hadar said that after he went to the Inferno continent, she saw him fighting and asked him to train her. Francois said that he took her with him. Jasmine said that, however, it is forbidden. Francois tried to hug her and said that she was asking very much, not saying such cruel things. Jasmine tried to pull away from her and said that her horn was sharp, so let her move away. Francois immediately walked away and said she was sorry. She still needs a break, and may she forgive her for almost stabbing her. Jasmine said it was okay, because she had just arrived here today and was tired. Franz, and I said goodbye to them and said that, okay, then good luck to them. Hadar and Jasmine wished her a good night, and after that, Hadar told her that there are not only villains on the Inferno continent, but you still need to be careful. Jasmine said it was true. She thinks she's a sweet and good kid. However, she is very glad that she was mistaken about her. Hadar looked at her questioningly and asked if she had said something. Jasmine just waved it off and said it was nothing. They need to get ready for tomorrow, so good night. After that, they went to their rooms. Hadar still couldn't fall asleep, and now he was standing by the open window. He said it was colder on this peninsula than he thought. Francois is strange, but he can't leave her, because he immediately remembered his mother. That's because it's the same dragon, right? At that moment, Francois herself came into the room and asked him how long the twilight lasted. Hadar was very surprised and asked why she was in his room. Francois said she felt he was cold. He should get into his bed as soon as possible, because then he will immediately warm up. Besides, she wanted to talk to him. He knows that his feet should always be warm. His servant must keep his shoes warm with his body. Hadar said he might have read about it in his mom's book. Francois also climbed onto his bed and said that besides, if her brother caught a cold, he would not be able to teach her. Hadar froze in place and thought that, as always, she was too close. Francois said that the student's duties are to take care of the teacher. Hadar thought that even if he asked her to stop doing it, she wouldn't listen to him anyway. He told her that she could behave as she wished, but let her keep her distance. Francois said it was fine. She will do her best to become the best student. Hadar said it was time to go to bed in order to prepare for tomorrow. Francois completely agreed with him. And after that, Francois did not go to her room, but lay down in the same bed with him. Hadar couldn't fall asleep in any way and thought, why are they in one bed? And why is it so close? He couldn't stand it and told her she was too close. Francois said she would not leave him. Hadar asked why. Francois said she was afraid to sleep, back on the continent. If she falls asleep, then a lot of strong monsters will covet her. She doesn't remember the last time she could sleep peacefully, but today she feels like she can sleep peacefully. He's a very strong and kind brother. Hadar happened to look at her breasts and blushed deeply because of this. Francois said she would stay by his side. She started hugging him again and asked if he hadn't said that she could come to him at any time if she had any problems. Hadar said that, however, he did not think that everything would turn out this way. Francois asked what he wasn't thinking. Right? He shouldn't have promised it then. Hadar said that his tongue was his enemy. Hadar said that his tongue was his enemy. After that, he covered her with a blanket and thought that he couldn't just leave her, so he would stay by her side. But then an idea came to his mind, and he thought that she would be able to sleep peacefully. However, how could he sleep in such a situation?